I never thought a phone call could change my life so much, but that's exactly what happened. One crisp autumn afternoon in Chicago, I noticed my phone ringing with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me pick it up. When I answered, I recognized the voice immediately, even though it had been years. "Samantha, it's Isabella," she said, sounding both formal and something else I couldn't quite figure out. "Isabella," I replied, trying to keep calm. "What's going on?" Isabella, my sister who I hadn't spoken to in years, was calling to tell me our grandmother had died. The news itself was shocking, but the way she said it made me feel like there was more to it. "I just wanted to let you know," she said with a hint of mockery. "I'm sure you're busy with your modest life." I could almost hear her smirking through the phone. Her words hurt, but I tried not to show it. "Thank you for telling me. I'll make plans to come." Her words not only hurt, but also brought back many memories. Growing up, Isabella was always the favorite. She had our father's approval and seemed to get everything easily. I, on the other hand, was often overlooked, no matter how hard I tried. Isabella and I hadn't spoken much in years. After she had stolen my fiancé, David, from me, I cut ties with her and the rest of my family. It wasn't just about the betrayal, it was about the unfair treatment I had always felt. David had been my fiancé, the love of my life, and we had plans together until Isabella, with her charm, got involved. David left me for her, and I was heartbroken. It wasn't just about losing him, it was a betrayal that left deep scars. Our family was always divided. Our father favored Isabella because she was like him. My mother, though caring, was often stuck in the middle. She tried to support me, but it was clear Isabella was the favorite. After the breakup, I chose a different path. I left my job as a school administrator to focus on raising my daughter, Lily. My husband, John, was a supportive tech executive who loved me for who I was. We had a cozy home in the suburbs and a life full of love. Lily, our 6-year-old daughter, loved drawing and even had a popular YouTube channel where she shared her artwork. Despite the happiness in my personal life, Isabella's call brought back a flood of old emotions. The idea of going back to the family home for the funeral made me nervous. I hadn't been there in years, and the memories were mixed. Our grandmother had always been kind and supportive. Her death marked the end of an era, and Isabella's call felt like I was being pulled back into a world I had tried to leave behind. I spent the next few days getting ready for the trip. The thought of seeing Isabella again filled me with a mix of dread and anticipation. It wasn't just about the funeral, it was about facing the family issues that had shaped so much of my life. I couldn't shake the feeling that Isabella's call had more to it than just the news of our grandmother's death. On the day of the funeral, I stood in front of the old family home. It looked exactly the same, yet different. It was like the walls held the echoes of our childhood, the laughter, the fights, the dreams, and the disappointments. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy with grief and memories. I saw familiar faces, some sad and others with hidden motives. As I moved through the crowd, I saw Isabella, her eyes scanning the room with practiced indifference. She was surrounded by people who seemed to hang on her every word, her charm still strong. I watched her with unease. Despite the years and distance, it felt like we were still in the same old struggle. Isabella's presence was a stark reminder of the family dynamics that had always been part of my life. During the ceremony, as the eulogies were being delivered, Isabella managed to corner me. "Samantha," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "it's been a while." I forced a smile and replied, "Yes, it has. How have you been?" "Oh, she replied, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Life has been interesting." I could sense the undertone in her words, the same old rivalry that had never really gone away. Looking at her, I realized this reunion wasn't just about mourning our grandmother, it was about facing the past, the betrayals, and the choices that shaped our lives. Little did I know this encounter would lead to revelations that would challenge everything I thought I knew about my sister and our family. The days leading up to the funeral were tense and filled with unresolved emotions. I tried to focus on my family, John, Lily, and our daily routines, but I couldn't ignore the upcoming reunion with Isabella and the family I had distanced myself from. The familiar, painful echoes of the past were all too real. On the day of the funeral, the air was thick with grief and unresolved emotions. The family home was filled with relatives and friends, all paying their respects. The house, with its worn charm, seemed to watch over us like an old friend holding secrets. The walls felt heavy with the weight of past arguments, laughter, and hidden truths. As I entered the living room, I felt Isabella's eyes on me, her presence as imposing as ever. Her polished exterior masked the deep-seated rivalry that had always existed between us. She soon approached me again, her smile more genuine but still carrying an edge. "I've been meaning to catch up," Isabella said, her voice curious. "It's been a while since we've had a chance to talk." I forced a smile, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Yes, it has. How have things been for you?" "Oh, Isabella replied with a wave of her hand. "Busy, but good. I'm sure you've heard from the family about how things have been for me. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what she meant. The last I heard, Isabella was living a luxurious life in Los Angeles. The stories I heard painted a picture of success and perfection, but I knew better than to believe them completely. During the wake, Isabella flaunted her perceived success. She talked about her life in Los Angeles, her upscale lifestyle, and her supposed achievements. It was as though she was trying to outshine everyone to prove her life was better than mine. I watched her with a mix of curiosity and irritation. I knew beneath her confident facade was a tangled web of lies and manipulations. It was hard to ignore her mentions of David Parker, my former fiancé and now her ex-husband. Her casual references to him, her attempts to show she was unaffected by their failed marriage, felt like salt in an old wound. David had once been the center of my world. We had planned a future together until Isabella, with her charm, had stolen him away. The betrayal left me heartbroken and disillusioned. Seeing Isabella flaunt her life so casually was a painful reminder of the hurt I had tried to move past. I decided to confront Isabella about the past, hoping to find some closure. As the crowd began to thin out, I pulled her aside into a quiet corner of the house. "Isabella, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep calm. She looked at me, narrowing her eyes a bit. "Of course. What's on your mind?" "I need to know why," I said, trying not to let my voice shake. "Why did you take David from me? What made you think you could do that?" Isabella's expression changed from fake cheerfulness to something colder and more calculating. "Samantha, it's not about taking anything. David and I had our own connection, you just didn't see it. You manipulated him," I said, my voice rising with emotion. "You knew how much I loved him." She shrugged like it didn't matter. "David made his own choices. You have to move on, Samantha. Life doesn't wait for anyone." Her dismissive attitude made me furious. "You never understood it, did you? It wasn't just about David. It was about how you always got everything while I struggled." Isabella's face hardened. "Don't blame me for your problems. We all have our battles. Maybe if you had been more assertive, things would have been different." Her words hurt, reopening old wounds. I wanted to lash out but took a deep breath to stay composed. "This isn't just about David. It's about our family and how things have always been against me." Before Isabella could respond, some distant relatives arrived and I had to step away, leaving the confrontation unresolved. The rest of the evening was a blur of faces and condolences, but my mind was stuck on the past and the issues with Isabella. The next day, as the funeral ended, I felt both relieved and worried. The family problems were still there, and I knew there was more to uncover. Isabella's perfect life was starting to crack, and I was determined to find out the truth. I left the funeral with a heavy heart but a new sense of purpose. There was more to the story, and I was ready to face it. The confrontation had set the stage for deeper revelations, and I was ready to uncover the lies and deceptions that had shaped our lives. In the days after the funeral, everything felt strangely calm. I kept replaying my confrontation with Isabella, trying to make sense of it. The family issues were still unresolved. My mother's apology was nice, but it didn't fix the years of problems. John and Lily were my support during this tough time. They sensed my distress but chose to offer comfort rather than prying into my troubles. Lily, with her innocent curiosity, continued to pour her heart into her YouTube channel, sharing her drawings with the world. Her joy was a bright spot amidst the darkness. Soon the next part of this story began. Isabella, always dramatic, took to social media to mock me. Her posts were sarcastic, showing herself as successful while implying my life was dull. It was frustrating to see her trying to belittle my happiness so publicly. That's when Lily's YouTube channel became a tool in this battle. After a particularly cruel post from Isabella, Lily and I decided to use her platform for more than just showcasing her drawings. I helped Lily create a video that countered Isabella's lies, focusing on the positive aspects of our life and subtly addressing the falsehoods Isabella was spreading. The video, though seemingly innocent, had clear references to Isabella's attempts to undermine us. It quickly gained attention, and soon the comment sections of both Lily's channel and Isabella's posts were filled with reactions. People began to see Isabella's facade for what it was, a mask hiding her insecurities and deceptions. As the video went viral, Isabella's reputation started to crumble. The backlash on social media was quick and harsh. Comments pointed out the inconsistencies in her stories and questioned her integrity. The spotlight she had crafted was now exposing her vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, Isabella's personal life began to fall apart too. David, struggling with the public fallout from our confrontation and the negative attention on his and Isabella's failed marriage, made a significant mistake at work. This led to his dismissal from his job as a software engineer. The pressure was too much for him, and he fell into a deep spiral of self-doubt. Unable to cope with the financial and emotional strain, Isabella made a drastic decision. She filed for divorce, cutting the last ties with David. Their son James, caught in this turmoil, was placed into a care facility because of Isabella's unstable situation, a stark contrast to the privileged life she once flaunted. The family dynamics were changing fast. My mother, who had always favored Isabella, approached me with a heartfelt apology for the past. She admitted that her favoritism towards Isabella was a mistake and acknowledged the hurt it caused. "I'm sorry for everything, Samantha," she said, her eyes filled with regret. "We should have treated you better. I see now how much pain we caused." I appreciated her words, but the scars of the past were not easily healed. I chose to keep a distant but cordial relationship with her, focusing on what truly mattered: my family's happiness and well-being. Amid these revelations, John and I decided to take a break from the chaos. We planned a joyful outing to an amusement park, a chance for Lily to enjoy herself and for us to reconnect as a family. It was a reminder of the simple joys and the love we shared. The trip was everything we needed, a day filled with laughter and bonding. It reinforced the strength of our family and highlighted the content life we had built together. It was a much-needed break from the drama and reminded me of the importance of moving forward with love and support. As we enjoyed the day, I realized that while the past had its shadows, the future held the promise of light. With Isabella's downfall and the family's apologies, I felt a sense of closure. The journey was far from over, but for now I could focus on cherishing the present and looking forward to a brighter future. The weeks after our trip to the amusement park brought a profound sense of calm. My life, once shaken by family discord, was finding its balance again. As I looked around at my little family, I realized how much we had grown through all the trials. Isabella's downfall was a hard lesson, but it was a reminder of the destructive power of envy and manipulation. Her failed attempts to belittle my life had only served to bring her own downfall into the spotlight. The divorce, the loss of her son to a care facility, and her diminishing reputation were harsh consequences of her choices. David, once a part of my life and now a figure of past regrets, faced his own challenges. His dismissal from his job left him struggling to find his footing. Yet despite everything, I felt detached from him. My focus had shifted entirely to my own family and the life we had worked so hard to build. John and I continued to nurture our relationship, finding strength in each other. Our daughter, Lily, thrived in her creative endeavors. Her YouTube channel remained a beacon of joy and positivity, helping to distract from the negativity that had surrounded us. Watching her grow and flourish was a constant reminder of what really mattered. One day I received a letter from my mother. In it she expressed her sorrow for the way things had unfolded and asked for forgiveness. Her apology was heartfelt, but I knew that mending our relationship would take time. I responded with kindness, acknowledging her regret while emphasizing the importance of moving forward. Our family dynamics had been permanently altered, but the experience had also brought clarity. My parents' favoritism towards Isabella and the subsequent fallout had taught me invaluable lessons about resilience and forgiveness. Healing from these wounds required more than just time. It required understanding and a willingness to let go of past grievances. In the quiet moments of reflection, I understood that the pain of the past had forged a stronger bond within my own family. John, Lily, and I were more connected than ever, and our shared experiences had deepened our appreciation for one another. We found solace in our daily routines and the small moments that brought us joy. As summer turned to fall, I began planning a new project, one that would honor the lessons learned and the family we had become. I started a community initiative focused on helping families navigate conflicts and build stronger relationships. It was a way to turn my experiences into something positive, offering support and guidance to others who might be facing similar challenges. Looking back, I saw how far we had come from those turbulent days. The confrontation at our grandmother's funeral, the subsequent revelations, and the social media battles had all led to a profound transformation. Isabella's story was a cautionary tale, but it was also a testament to my own resolve and the importance of moving forward with love. As I closed the final chapter of the story, I felt a sense of closure. The journey had been hard but also enlightening. The road ahead was filled with promise, and I was ready to embrace it with an open heart. In the end, it was the love of my family and the lessons learned that had guided me through. With John by my side, Lily's laughter brightening our days, and the community project taking shape, I knew that the future was ours to shape. As I looked forward, I carried with me the certainty that no matter what challenges lay ahead, our family's strength and unity would guide us through.
I've decided to split the $5 million between my mom and me. This decision came right after my dad's funeral. Bob, who had looked through the inheritance papers without asking, said to me, "Elena, don't be greedy." At that moment, I thought to myself, finally, I can quit my job and be thankful for the old man. But then Bob called him a doddering old man. I couldn't help but blurt out, "Are you talking about my dad?" while ignoring my shock. Bob and my mother-in-law were already excitedly talking about buying a new car and going shopping. With everything going on, I couldn't hold back my emotions any longer. I was about to burst, on top of all the housework, asking for money, and then them insulting my dad. I just couldn't live with Bob and my mother-in-law anymore. Holding back my anger, I forced a smile and said, "Sure, feel free to use the money as you and my mother-in-law see fit." I am Alina Anaya, a 40-year-old housewife working with my husband. My parents, both doctors, ran a well-known clinic in our hometown. As their only child, I was deeply loved. After finishing Commonwealth School, I got a job at a big pharmaceutical company. Though my parents wished I had become a doctor, they supported my choice. 12 years ago, my mother died in an accident, leaving me and my father heartbroken. During that tough time, Bob, who was then my boyfriend, supported me. We met through a friend and got engaged 4 years after my mom's death. Bob worked in the food and beverage sector and earned less than me, but I believed we could face any challenge and be happy together. My dad was very happy for us. When I told my dad about our engagement, he said, "I've heard how Bob has supported you, Alina. Thank you so much. Please continue to take care of her." Bob stood up straight and promised in front of my dad, "I will make her happy." Standing next to Bob, I felt truly happy. The next week, we went to Bob's family home to announce our marriage. His mother, who wore a lot of makeup and was divorced from Bob's father, looked me over critically. "Marriage, huh? You're Bob's choice. Isn't she a bit plain for you? And she's older, right? Wouldn't a younger and prettier girl be better for you?" Bob quickly replied, "Mom, you know in pharmaceuticals, right? Alina works there. Her father is a doctor and runs his own practice." I expected Bob to talk about my personality, but instead, he talked about my job and my dad's status. Hearing this, his mother's attitude changed. "Oh, Bob, you should have mentioned these important things earlier. That changes everything. I happily approve of the marriage. Nice to meet you, Elena." "Thank you." After getting approval from Bob's mother, Bob was very happy. However, I felt uneasy even though everything was going smoothly with our plans to get married. When we were about to register our marriage, my dad, who is a doctor and real estate investor, gave me an apartment in a luxury building in San Diego City as a wedding gift. I told Bob, "Dad has given me this apartment as a wedding gift, but it's our new home. Let's live here happily and peacefully together." Bob smiled, and we started our married life. However, after getting married, I realized something unsettling. Bob, who had lived with his parents until then, was almost incapable of doing household chores. He couldn't cook, didn't know how to use the washing machine, and showed no interest in learning. He would leave his garbage scattered around, not bothering to clean up. While I wanted us to share household responsibilities, Bob's careless attitude increased my frustration. In the first year of our marriage, I managed all the household responsibilities, even though I had some complaints and since we were still in the honeymoon phase. But with the exhaustion from work and the struggle to keep up with chores, I reached my limit in our second year. I decided it was time to have a serious talk with Bob about sharing household duties. I bravely shared my unhappiness with Bob, but to my disappointment, he responded without any appreciation or thought, saying, "I'm tired from work too. You're much better at chores than I am, right? It's better if you do them since I'm not good at it." Just like that, Bob hardly helped with the chores, and I continued to handle most of our household duties. But that wasn't the only issue. After marrying Bob, I found out his mother also had some strange ideas. Bob wasn't really into celebrating occasions, so I decided to send a quality scarf and some carnations to his mother for Mother's Day. Even though I picked a nice scarf from a department store, his mother called me displeased. She criticized the scarf for not being from a famous brand and said it was ridiculous to send such an unknown item. I tried to explain its quality, but she wouldn't listen, insisting she wanted something from a very famous luxury brand. Shocked, I told Bob about this when he got home, but instead of understanding, he said, "Just do as she says." Bob didn't support me, and from then on, we started giving his mother cash as she demanded. Moreover, by our 7th year of marriage, she began visiting our home frequently, always finding reasons to ask for money. Bob would always smile and give money to his mother without any complaints. Even though I had a job, Bob's income was small, making our daily life just barely manageable. Out of desperation, I had to dip into our savings to cut living expenses. Despite my frustrations, I knew Bob cherished his mother, and she had supported me during tough times. She was the mother of someone important to me, and with that thought, I endured. Now, in our 10 years of marriage, I continue to handle all the household chores and keep giving money to my mother-in-law. One day, during this routine, my father, whom I hadn't seen in a while, unexpectedly called me. The story he shared during our rare meeting was shockingly unexpected. He revealed that he was suffering from terminal cancer and that treatment was no longer possible. Overwhelmed with shock, tears spilled from my eyes. My father gently stroked my head, just as he did when I was a child, saying, "Elena, this is fate. Let's accept it quietly." I asked my dad why even he had to go through this. My days became a constant balancing act of work, household duties, and now visits to my father's hospital. While my job was somewhat flexible, managing the house was tough. When I told Bob I would be taking care of my father, he didn't react or offer to help. "It's tough with your father's sudden illness. Please do your best," was all Bob said. He only visited my father in the hospital once. I was so busy taking care of my father that I didn't have time for Bob. If I had time to worry about Bob, I wanted to prioritize my father. One day, as my father lay in his hospital bed, he suddenly asked, "Elena, how is your marriage with Bob going?" Caught off guard, I thought about Bob's attitude at home and his mother's behavior. I couldn't answer properly. Seeing my hesitation, my father seemed to understand and told me, "Elena, you don't have to endure this. Think about your happiness. Don't worry, you won't have any hardships after I'm gone." I couldn't hold back my tears, and my father silently and firmly held my hand. 5 months later, the inevitable happened. My father passed away quietly. Engulfed in immense sorrow, I started arranging the funeral. Bob showed no interest in my grief and didn't help with any of the preparations. Despite this, I was too busy with the funeral arrangements to pay much attention to Bob. Many friends and acquaintances attended my father's funeral, making it a heartfelt farewell. Even the indifferent Bob and his mother attended. The day after the funeral, I received a call from a lawyer about my father's inheritance. I arranged a meeting with the lawyer and listened to the explanation. The information was all new and quite surprising. After deducting taxes, like inheritance tax, my father's estate amounted to over $5 million. He had not only earned income as a doctor, but also made real estate investments, leaving behind such a vast fortune, all of it to be inherited by me, his only daughter. Wrapped in surprise and gratitude, yet trembling at the thought of handling such a huge amount of money, I proceeded with the inheritance process after returning home. I laid out the documents I got from the lawyer on my desk and started reading them. I was so tired that I ended up dozing off on the sofa for a bit. When I woke up, I heard Bob and his mother talking happily in the distance. "Huh, Bob and Mom too? When did you come?" I asked as I got up. Bob came over with a big smile and said, "Yes, Elena, well done." Confused by his sudden excitement, I noticed the inheritance papers in Bob's hand. "Wait, don't just read those without asking," I said, shocked and upset that Bob had looked through the documents without permission. I raised my voice at him, but my mother-in-law, not bothered at all, happily chimed in, "Wow, an inheritance of $5 million. Isn't that amazing? Now we can live comfortably for the rest of our lives." Confused, I couldn't understand why she would say that so suddenly. Then Bob turned serious and continued, "By the way, about this $5 million, I've decided it will be split between me and my mom. It was right after my father's funeral. Bob, having looked at the documents related to the inheritance I was supposed to receive without permission, said to me, "Elena, don't be too greedy. Oh, now I can finally quit my job. I have to thank that doddering old man." "Are you talking about my dad?" I accidentally said out loud. "Well, anyway, let's proceed with the inheritance process and get the money into our joint account as soon as possible," Bob said, ignoring my confusion. At that moment, Bob and my mother-in-law were excitedly talking about buying a new car and shopping. I couldn't hold back my emotions any longer. I was on the verge of exploding. Being burdened with household chores, asked for money, and to top it off, they insulted my father. While holding back my anger, I replied with a forced smile, "Sure, use the money, you and my mother-in-law, as you wish." Hearing this, my mother-in-law, seemingly satisfied, cheerfully said, "That's the spirit, Elena," quick to agree. "Now make sure you work hard and earn money." "I don't want our savings to go down, so work hard," she said. I just nodded and pretended to listen to her selfish words. After that, Bob and my mother-in-law started spending money like crazy. Bob quit his job quickly, and my mother-in-law practically moved in with us, staying at our house all the time. They would leave in the morning and come back with expensive brand items. The five-star restaurant we went to today wasn't as great as I expected. Yes, it was a bit disappointing for us, the sophisticated ones, they would say, acting like they were rich celebrities and dumping all the housework on me as if I were a maid. Bob seemed to think my father's inheritance would be available right away. He carelessly withdrew money from our joint account, and my savings of $300,000 dwindled rapidly. When I complained about their excessive spending, Bob just laughed it off, saying, "What are you talking about? Isn't $5 million coming soon? Then this kind of spending is no big deal." I warned him I had already stopped it, but Bob completely ignored me. Then, a month later, Bob and my mother-in-law suddenly left for a trip to Bermuda. I wasn't invited and was left alone at home. After seeing them off, I decided to take action. About a week later, while I was relaxing at home, I heard a loud knock on the door. Wondering what was happening, I glanced at the intercom monitor and saw Bob and my mother-in-law, both dressed in aloha shirts, standing at the front door. What do you want?" I asked calmly and coldly with anger. Bob yelled, "What are you even talking about? Why won't the door open?" Seeing Bob and my mother-in-law confused as to why the door wouldn't open, I confidently answered through the intercom, "Well, I changed the locks on the door, so of course it won't open." "What? Why?" Bob exclaimed. "Let's talk over this calmly at the nearby cafe. Please go ahead. I'll join you shortly," I suggested. Bob and his mother, after shouting in front of the entrance, seemingly realized it was futile and soon headed to the cafe. Once I confirmed they had left, I felt a moment of relief. I went to the cafe and saw Bob and his mother already there, waiting angrily. "Hey, what's this about? Did you change the locks? Hand over the new keys right now," Bob demanded. "There's no need for me to give you the new keys. You both need to leave that house," I calmly told Bob and his mother. Facing a visibly angry Bob, I showed him a piece of paper. It was a divorce petition I had already filled out. "Divorce? You're serious about divorcing me?" His mother was equally shocked and confused. "Elena, why has it come to this?" I spoke quietly to the two of them, who were panicking and flustered. "With the way you've been spending money every day, are you sure your finances are okay?" "What money? Of course, it's fine," Bob snapped back, spitting as he spoke. "Your father's inheritance is coming, right? There should still be over $100,000 in our joint account. Look, I'll show you right now." Saying this, Bob took out his smartphone and opened the banking app to check the account. Suddenly, his expression changed. "What? What's this? Why is the money gone? It was there just the other day," Bob exclaimed. Hearing Bob's words, his mother also hurriedly looked at her phone, her face showing confusion. I revealed the truth to them as they were panicking, not understanding the situation. Of course, it's gone. I'm divorcing you, so I moved that $100,000 to my account as part of the property division. What do you mean? Bob's face turned to anger for a moment, but then he smirked, as if remembering something. Fine, I'll divorce you then. Transfer the inheritance you got from your dad right away. After all, property acquired during the marriage is split half and half in a divorce, right? Well, you might be misunderstanding something, I replied. Didn't you know? The inheritance I received, even though it was during our marriage, doesn't count for property division. There was a moment of silence between us. Then Bob and his mother's expressions changed drastically. Perhaps they truly believed they would receive part of my inheritance. I was utterly shocked and could only sigh in disbelief at the unfolding situation. No, that can't be true, I muttered under my breath, but the truth of the matter was glaringly clear. Her face turned red with a mix of denial and anger. Please, check for yourself, I said with a mocking tone that I couldn't quite mask. Bob immediately started frantically searching on his smartphone, desperate to prove me wrong. As he scrolled through the legal texts online, his face fell. It says here that property inherited by one spouse from a parent is considered separate property, therefore it's not subject to division and can't be split between the spouses. His voice was tinged with disbelief. What? Seriously? His mother, too, peered over his shoulder, her expression turning to one of shock as the reality of the legal standing dawned on them. Then, Bob approached me, his demeanor shifting to one of desperation. Elena, please don't divorce me. I have no savings and no job. How am I supposed to live if you divorce me? His plea was laden with panic and fear, but I had seen too much and endured too much to be swayed by his sudden show of vulnerability. Facing Bob's pleading, I stood my ground, my voice firm and unwavering. What are you talking about? Take responsibility for your actions. I will never forget how you and your mother treated me. I'm divorcing you, and I'll go to court if I have to. My declaration was clear, a line drawn firmly in the sand. Intimidated by my fierce demeanor, which they had never witnessed before, Bob and his mother recoiled. They shrunk back in fear, whimpering softly. As they stood there, dejected and defeated, I knew I had finally taken a stand. The weight of my decision was heavy but necessary, as I sought to reclaim my dignity and future from the ruins of a marriage that had veered so far off the path I had once envisioned. After walking out of the cafe, the divorce proceedings between Bob and I proceeded without major obstacles. The $100,000 I had shifted from our joint account was acknowledged as part of the division of our marital assets. Over time, I managed to legally compel Bob and his mother to vacate my house. This was a relief as Bob, having already squandered the money from our marital division, found himself in a precarious financial state. He was penniless and increasingly overwhelmed with a mountain of bills, stemming from lavish expenditures on their overseas trip and various other expenses charged to his credit cards. As Bob's financial troubles escalated, he sank deeper into debt. Both he and his mother were forced to take on additional loans just to keep up with their mounting bills. Eventually, they moved into a rundown apartment, a stark departure from their previous luxurious lifestyle. They now find themselves working exhaustively every day to manage their debts, a situation that has been a profound and shocking adjustment for both. Meanwhile, I took decisive steps to move forward with my life. I sold the condo that I once shared with Bob, a place full of mixed memories, and moved into the apartment that had belonged to my late father. This move was not just a change of scenery, it was a step towards reclaiming my independence and starting afresh on my own terms. In this new chapter of my life, I continued my work as before, maintaining the same job that had always given me a sense of stability and purpose. However, with the inheritance I received from my father, my financial situation became significantly more comfortable. This financial security has allowed me to live without the constant stress of monetary concerns that once plagued my marriage with Bob. Living in my father's apartment has brought a new sense of peace and continuity to my life. Every day, I wake up with a heart full of gratitude for the man who not only raised me with love, but also ensured that I would be secure after he was gone. This gratitude has inspired me to approach life with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. With the lessons learned from my troubled marriage, I am now more committed than ever to protecting my happiness and well-being. I've come to realize the importance of being surrounded by people who support and uplift me, rather than those who seek to take advantage. As I move forward, I am determined to cherish and make the most out of every moment, focusing on personal growth and happiness. As the days pass, I find myself more at ease, enjoying a life that is not just about survival, but about thriving. My days are spent peacefully, indulging in small joys, and planning for a future that I now look forward to with optimism and excitement. The stark contrast between my life now and the life I shared with Bob serves as a constant reminder of how far I've come and how much I've achieved on my own. Okay then, I'm going on the trip with my mom. You stay here, okay? I was shocked and couldn't say a word. But this is the prize I won in the contest, you know. Also, if the winner doesn't use the ticket, it becomes useless. I wanted to say that, but my husband David cut me off with something shocking. If you don't like it, we can just get a divorce, he said. Excuse me. I mean, if you can't agree with what I'm saying, then we should get a divorce. His words made my feelings for him instantly fade. My name is Olivia, and I'm a 32-year-old office worker. I went to an all-girls school from middle school through university and started working without really talking to men. I was so busy with work that I never had time to fall in love. Suddenly, I was 27 and still single. Thinking this was not right, a friend set me up on a blind date. That's how I met my first boyfriend, who was a freelancer but lied about being an office worker. After we started dating, he lost his job and seemed ready to rely on me for everything. I ended things as soon as I could. After that experience, I became even more cautious about men and found it hard to trust them. So I reached 40 without any serious relationships. My parents were even more worried about me than I was. Both my parents had already been married for several years by the time they were my age, so they were quite eager for me to settle down as well. Back then, most people got married by 24, but nowadays it's common to marry later, even in your 40s. My dad started bringing me several arranged marriage proposals, saying he'd find someone for me since I didn't have a boyfriend. At first, I rejected all the offers, but over time, I felt bad for continuously saying no to what my dad suggested. I could tell that my parents, who wanted nothing but happiness for their only daughter, were getting impatient. So I decided to take a positive step and agreed to go on a blind date to show my appreciation for my parents. That's when I met David, who later became my husband. David was 31, just like me. He had been to an all-boys school and never really had the opportunity to fall in love with a girl before. What I liked about him was how caring he was towards his parents. He looked after them well, often visited their home, and took them on trips. He appeared to have a good character and a stable job at a company. I checked his business card to be sure. Having learned from a past mistake with a previous boyfriend, I was very cautious. However, everything seemed normal with David, and I felt he was trustworthy. As we dated, David, knowing I was shy, took the initiative and treated me very well. I gradually found myself more drawn to him. After 3 years of dating, David proposed, and we got married. My parents were overjoyed and shed tears of happiness when they heard the news that I was finally getting married. I genuinely felt fortunate to have met a good man and was equally pleased about looking after my parents in this significant way. After our wedding, my husband and I enjoyed our honeymoon and began our married life with joy and companionship. We both had jobs, so we shared the household duties accordingly. Cooking was my forte as my husband wasn't great at it, so he took on the laundry and cleaning tasks. We worked well together, supporting each other and enjoying a harmonious married life. However, our marital bliss faced challenges after just a year. The turning point came when my father-in-law died from an illness. This event deeply affected my husband, who then started paying excessive attention to my mother-in-law, Julie, who was left alone. David, my husband, began spending his days off at his mother's house. Sometimes he and Julie would go out, just the two of them, and occasionally he would stop by her place after work to share a meal. They even started taking trips together. This situation made me feel deeply disrespected. It wasn't just about him caring for his mother, which I understood and respected, but the secrecy and the priority he gave her over our relationship hurt me. It seemed he had shifted from being family-oriented to becoming overly attached to his mother, a true mama's boy. Despite this, David appeared oblivious to the implications of his actions or how they affected our marriage. In an effort to maintain peace and hoping for a change, I decided to compromise and continue investing in our relationship. The idea of divorcing after only a year of marriage was upsetting, particularly considering how it would affect my parents. Moreover, I harbored hopes that starting a family might bring a new dynamic to our relationship, potentially shifting David's focus. The decision to not rush into a divorce was difficult, but I resolved to stick it out, pondering on the complexities of our relationship and the potential for change. I recently started a new hobby of entering contests to win prizes, which I found surprisingly enjoyable. I've been winning things like cosmetics and food by writing reviews and staying persistent. Then I won a big prize in one contest: airline tickets to Fiji. I was so surprised that I read the email 3 times. I carefully checked to make sure it wasn't a scam. It didn't lead me to any strange websites or ask for my credit card information, so it was indeed a real win. I learned that I needed to contact the airline in advance to use the tickets. I wondered who to take with me. My husband had just gone to New Hampshire with Julie. I thought about asking my friends or my parents. Eventually, I decided to give the tickets to my parents so they could enjoy the trip. I went to my parents' house to tell them about it. It's been years since we traveled abroad. "Are you sure about this?" my dad asked. "You won this, Olivia." "It's okay, don't worry about it. I want to treat you guys this time," I said. They were happy, but then my dad noticed something in the ticket's conditions. "This ticket is only valid for the person who won it and can't be transferred or sold," he read. "What? Does that mean I can't give it to you both?" I asked. "Yeah, it seems so," he replied. "Oh well, it can't be helped," my mom said. "You won it, honey, so why don't you go with David?" Since my parents suggested it, I decided to go with my husband. When I returned home from my parents' house that night, I found a woman's coat by the front door. It looked familiar. Yes, it was Julie's coat. When I entered the living room, I saw Julie watching TV. "Oh, Olivia, did you just get home? It's your day off? So what kept you out so late?" she asked. "Oh, I didn't know you were here, Julie," I replied. "What are you implying? Is it wrong for me to visit my son's house?" she said. "No, it's not," I answered. "Julie seemed nicer to me when my father-in-law was still alive. Since he passed, she has been very strict and cold towards me." "What's this? What did you buy?" Julie noticed the bag I was carrying. "It's nothing," I said. "Just show it to me," she demanded. "Why?" I asked. "Just show it," she insisted, and then she snatched the bag from me. "Fiji? Are you just treating yourself? What are you doing with David's money?" "What are you talking about? I've never depended on David's money," I said. "I won a pair of travel tickets in a contest, so I thought I would go on the trip with my husband." "Oh, really? A prize, huh?" Julie's mood suddenly changed, and she got excited. I had a bad feeling about this. Then my husband came into the living room, fresh from a bath. "Oh, Olivia, "Welcome back. What's wrong?" he asked, hearing his mother's excited voice from the bath. "David, listen. Olivia won a trip to Fiji in a contest," Julie told him. "Wow, that's great," he said. "Yeah," I added, "so I decided I'd go with you, David. I even bought a guidebook for it." "How many people can go on that trip?" he asked. "It's just 2 tickets, so it would be just us," I replied. David was silent for a moment, glancing at Julie. She was looking at him with wide eyes, like a dog hoping to be fed. "Okay, well then, I'm going to go on the trip with my mom. You stayed home, okay?" he said. I was completely speechless. I couldn't believe David was so attached to his mom. "This is what I won from the contest, you know," I reminded him. "So what? We're a couple, so what's yours is mine, right? And what's mine is my mom's," he replied. What kind of logic is that? I thought. No way. Besides, you and Julie just went on a trip a few weeks ago. That trip doesn't relate to this one. I paid for that, and it was within the country, he argued. I haven't been on an overseas trip in years. "I'm so excited," Julie chimed in, already planning the trip. "Hey, I didn't even agree that you two would be the ones going. Besides, the ticket would be invalid if I'm not there," I tried to say, but David cut me off with something shocking. "If you don't like it, then we can just get a divorce," he said. "Excuse me," I said, "if you can't listen and follow what I say, then we'll get a divorce." I never thought he would say something like that. Instantly, my affection for him cooled. "Do whatever you want," I told him. "Why didn't you just say you were so selfish?" Both David and Julie looked as if they had won a big fight. They took the guidebook from me and began to happily plan their trip. Meanwhile, I started thinking about what I would do after a divorce. Later, my husband asked me to contact the airline, so I did. I asked if I could give the tickets to my husband or relatives if I couldn't go. "Sorry, but you're not allowed to give the tickets away, even to your family or relatives," the operator replied. "Well, of course," I said, realizing this made sense. I then decided to decline the tickets I had won in the contest and hung up the phone. Afterwards, I told my husband about my decision. "I called to remind you about the terms and conditions on the tickets, so please check the details." Then my husband scoffed and said, "I don't need to read the terms and conditions," and left the tickets on the shelf. He probably never thought those tickets could be invalid. I told my parents about this incident. I asked them for help because I planned to move out on the day David and Julie went on their trip. My father was shocked when he heard what happened. He had suggested the arranged marriage with David, so he felt responsible. "It's not your fault, Dad. He only recently started showing his true colors," I reassured him, trying to make him feel better. On the day of the trip, David was in a great mood and getting ready to leave. "Well, I'm off then. Take care of the house while I'm gone," he said with a big grin. "Yeah, have fun," I replied with a big smile, surprising him. As soon as he left, my parents arrived to help me move. They loaded my belongings into the car, and we drove to the new apartment I had found near my office. I had started looking for a new place as soon as I got fed up with my husband. 5 hours later, my husband called me. "Hello." "Hey, what's going on?" "They said our airline tickets are invalid." "Yes, that's correct. If the winner doesn't go, the tickets are invalid." "I didn't hear anything about that." "I told you, didn't I? I told you to check the terms and conditions. It's all written right there." "You've got to be kidding me. I wouldn't even read that." "Well, that's your fault for not reading it. It's like someone who gets sued and says they didn't know anything about the law. What am I supposed to do now? I already got a hotel in Fiji. They told me I'd have to pay for our own ticket fees. Like I said, it's none of my business anymore. You and Julie should just take care of it." I said that and hung up the phone. 20 minutes later, my husband called again. "What now?" "Hey, why can't I pay with your card?" "Huh? My card? What do you mean?" I panicked and checked the drawers, only to find that my card, which I had been using as a backup, was gone. You took the card without my permission. I was only borrowing it for a little while, but I was told by the airline staff that I can't use this card. What the hell is going on? Are you stupid? If you're not the owner of the card, you can't use it. But on the internet? Huh, internet? Oh no. And he hung up the phone. No way. I immediately checked my credit card statement for the card I used as a backup and saw charges I didn't recognize. I remembered my husband had been buying a lot of clothes and other things recently. He must have used my card without my permission. I quickly blocked the card and took a screenshot of the statement history. With this evidence, I planned to confront him later. A few days after his trip to Fiji, my husband called. Hey, what is the meaning of this? I don't see any of your stuff and belongings in our house anymore. And you left divorce papers on the table. What the hell are you thinking? Well, I can't go on living with a mama's boy who prioritizes his mother over his wife and turns into a thief using my credit card without permission. What? If you won't sign the divorce papers, then let's fight in court. Court? Oh, are you in trouble? If people at work find out about this. I see. Then I'll request my divorce through my lawyer, so you better quietly agree to the request. No way. My husband reluctantly agreed to the divorce. He accepted on the condition that there would be no division of property, and he would also pay for the credit card bills he racked up without my permission. But my revenge doesn't end there. I decided not to talk about what had happened, but I wasn't sure what my father, who had arranged the marriage, would do or say. Soon my ex-husband called me. Hey, this is not what we agreed on. Everyone at work knows about what happened. Now, they talk about me behind my back, and I'm known as a mama's boy and a thief. I can't hold my head high in my company anymore. Oh, what a pity, I replied, but I hadn't told anyone about this. Did you forget that so many people were involved in our marriage? He asked. Yes, our marriage was arranged through connections. My father, a general manager, and my ex-husband's boss, a department head, were good friends. They set up our blind date because my ex-husband was a promising bachelor working under him. It turned out that my ex-husband's boss was very upset with him over this whole mess. David was now being shunned at work, and his career prospects had dimmed. As for Julie, the news had spread to her neighbors, and they started avoiding her, leading her to isolate herself at home. They both faced the consequences of their actions, and I felt no sympathy for them. Meanwhile, I focused on my career, earned a promotion, and received a raise. To celebrate, I took my parents on an overseas trip to France, a place we had all wanted to visit for a long time. We created wonderful memories together. This whole ordeal has been a learning experience for me. I'm shocked that he turned out to be not just overly attached to his mom, but also a thief. At this point, there's nothing more to be done for him. I'm relieved that my family enjoyed their time together in France. I hope I, a kind and family-oriented person, will find someone better and truly wonderful in the future. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel, and we hope to see you in our next video. Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm 35 years old and love to keep things neat and organized. I work as an auditor at a big company. My friends often tease me about how I always keep receipts and pay my taxes on time. But I believe these small habits help me stay in control of my life. Let me tell you how I met my husband, Brian. We met at a party hosted by our mutual friend, Julie. I remember that evening well. I was drinking a glass of wine and chatting with some old college friends when Brian walked in. He was a bit older, with a confident walk and a charming smile. He worked as a manager at a food sales company. Hey, I'm Brian. Mind if I join you? He asked, holding a beer and looking directly at me. Sure, I'm Kelly. Nice to meet you, I replied with a smile. We started talking, and I was surprised by how easy it was to chat with him. We discovered that we both loved hiking and had a shared passion for classic rock music. A few months into our relationship, Brian invited me to his sister Lauren's barbecue. It was my first time meeting his family, and I was a bit nervous. When we arrived, Lauren greeted us warmly, but her 5 kids were a different story. They were running around, screaming, and throwing toys everywhere. "Hey Lauren, this is Kelly," Brian said, introducing me. "Nice to meet you, Kelly. These are my little rascals, Paul, James, and Helen," Lauren said, barely holding onto James, who was trying to squirm out of her grasp. "Nice to meet you all," I replied, trying to hide my discomfort. As the evening went on, the kids got wilder. They were climbing on furniture, throwing food, and yelling at the top of their lungs. I looked at Brian, hoping he would say something, but he just smiled and shrugged. "Aren't they just full of energy?" he said with a chuckle. I forced a smile and said, "Yeah, they sure are." As Brian and I got closer, we started talking about our future together. He proposed to me during a hike on top of a beautiful hill overlooking the valley. It was simple and sweet, just the way I liked it. Our wedding was lovely, except for one little problem: Lauren's kids. They were running around, making a mess, and being loud. Lauren didn't seem to mind, and Brian thought it was funny. "Look at them, they're having so much fun," Brian said, laughing as he watched them spill drinks and toss food around. "Yeah, but they're also making a huge mess," I replied, trying to keep calm. "Oh, come on, Em, they're just kids. Let them enjoy," he said, shrugging it off. I didn't want to spoil our special day by arguing, so I let it go, hoping things would get better once we settled into our new life together. After we got married, Brian and I decided to buy a house. We had been living in a rented apartment, but we wanted a place of our own. I was really excited about this new chapter in our lives. One evening after work, Brian and I sat down to talk about our finances and how we would manage the costs for our new home. "Kelly, we need to figure out how we're going to split the costs," Brian said, leaning back on the couch. "Yeah, I've been thinking about that too," I replied. "I can handle the furniture, appliances, and some art pieces. What about you?" "Well, I was thinking I could buy you a new car. I know your old one is giving you trouble," Brian suggested. I was surprised and happy. "Really? That would be amazing. My car is practically falling apart." "Yeah, I've seen it struggle. It's time you had something reliable," he said with a smile. We started house hunting right away. After a few weeks of looking, we found a beautiful house that we both loved. It was a bit expensive, but we decided it was worth it. Moving in was a busy process, but I was excited about decorating our new home. I spent a lot of time picking out furniture and appliances, making sure everything was nice and stylish. One Sunday, Brian surprised me with a new car. It was a sleek, shiny sedan, and I was thrilled. "Brian, this is incredible. Thank you so much." I hugged him tightly and exclaimed, "Thank you so much, Brian. This means a lot to me." "You're welcome, Kelly. You deserve it," he said, looking proud of himself. As we settled into our new home, things seemed to be going well. We both enjoyed our jobs and loved coming home to our cozy house. But small things started to bother me. Brian's laid-back attitude, which I once found charming, was beginning to annoy me, especially when it came to household chores. "Brian, can you help me with the dishes tonight?" I asked one evening after dinner. I had a long day at work. Can't we just leave them for tomorrow?" he replied, looking at me with pleading eyes. "Brian, we can't keep putting things off. I'm tired too, but we need to keep this place clean," I insisted. "Fine, I'll do it," he said with a heavy sigh as he got up from the couch. A few months into our marriage, I started worrying because I couldn't get pregnant. It was really stressing me out. I went to the doctor, and he told me to be patient, that it would happen when the time was right. Still, it was hard not to worry about it. Meanwhile, Brian's sister, Lauren, with her 5 kids, was visiting a lot. Lauren lived in a neighboring state, but you'd think she lived next door with how often she was around. Every time she came over, she'd unload all her problems with her husband on me. It was nonstop. During dinner, while we were trying to relax, she'd be at it, talking about her issues. "Kelly, you won't believe what Richard did this time," Lauren would start, rolling her eyes. "Lauren, can we talk about something else for once?" I'd ask, trying to steer the conversation away from her marital drama. "Oh, come on, Kelly, I need to vent." "You're the only one who understands," she'd reply, not getting the hint at all. And her kids were a nightmare. As soon as they stepped into our house, it was like a circus. They'd run around, fighting with each other, throwing food, and just being loud. After a long week at work, all I wanted was some peace and quiet, but that was impossible with those kids around. "Guys, can you calm down, please?" I'd say, trying to keep my cool as they tore through the living room. "Why are you always so uptight, Kelly?" Lauren would snap at me whenever I tried to get her kids to behave. "They're making a mess, Lauren. I just cleaned the house," I'd respond, feeling my patience wearing thin. "Well, maybe if you had your own kids, you'd understand," she shot back one day, her words hitting me like a punch in the gut. I was shocked by how insensitive she was, especially since she knew how hard I was trying to get pregnant. It felt like a slap in the face, and I couldn't believe Brian didn't say anything to defend me. "Brian, are you going to let her talk to me like that?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. "Kelly, calm down. You're making a big deal out of nothing," he said, taking her side again. "A big deal out of nothing? She just insulted me in my own home," I shouted, feeling tears start to form. I was so fed up. I couldn't keep living like this, constantly being disrespected in my own home, with my husband always siding with his sister. It was clear that something had to change, and soon. One Sunday, Lauren showed up with her 5 kids. She dumped them on me and said, "Kelly, I need a break from parenting. I'm going shopping." I couldn't help but chuckle at her mention of parenting. The woman barely knew what that meant. Every time she was here, it was like a zoo. "Fine, Lauren, but you better be quick," I said, already feeling stressed. "Thanks, Kelly, you're a lifesaver," she chirped, grabbing her purse and bolting out the door before I could say anything else. Great, I thought, just what I needed. I was in the kitchen trying to cook dinner. It's a long process, and I like things done right. But with those kids running wild, it was impossible to focus. They were yelling, running around, and making a mess. "Guys, can you keep it down?" I shouted from the kitchen, hoping they'd listen for once. Of course they didn't. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash. My heart sank. I ran into the living room, and there it was, my grandfather's antique Chinese vase shattered on the floor. My chest tightened with anger and frustration. What happened here? I screamed, looking at the kids who were now standing still, looking guilty. "We were just playing," one of them mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "This vase is priceless. It's from my grandfather. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I was livid, shaking with anger. Just then, Brian walked in, looking all calm and clueless. "What's going on, Kelly?" "Your nephews just broke my grandfather's vase. Look at this mess." I pointed at the shattered pieces on the floor. "Calm down, Kelly. It's just a vase. We can get it fixed," Brian said, shrugging like it was no big deal. "Just a vase? This isn't about the vase, Brian. It's about respect. I'm tired of this. Every time Lauren comes over, our house turns into a mess, and you don't care," I shouted, my voice cracking with frustration. Just then, Lauren walked in with shopping bags, looking annoyed. "What's all this yelling about?" "Your kids broke my grandfather's vase, Lauren. Look at this mess." I pointed at the floor, trying to hold back my tears. "Well, maybe you should have kept a better eye on them, Kelly," she said, not even bothering to apologize. "Are you kidding me? They're your kids, Lauren. I shouldn't have to watch them." I was furious, my hands shaking with anger. Brian just shook his head, looking annoyed. "You're overreacting, Kelly. Just drop it." "Overreacting? I've had enough of this. I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter in my own home," I screamed, the tears finally spilling over. Brian just stood there, silent and cold, while Lauren smirked like she had won something. I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed out of the room, feeling a mix of anger, hurt, and betrayal. We've been dealing with Lauren and her kids' chaotic visits for months, but I had no idea what was coming next. One morning, Brian was sitting at the kitchen table, munching on his toast, when he casually dropped a bombshell on me. "Kelly, I need to tell you something. Lauren's getting divorced, and she's moving in with us with the kids for a few months," he said, like he was just telling me the weather. I almost dropped my coffee. "What? Are you serious? Our house is already a madhouse when they visit for a day. How are we supposed to handle them living here for months? She's my sister, Kelly. She needs our help. You need to be more understanding," he said, looking at me like I was the one being unreasonable. Understanding? I've been more than understanding, Brian, but this is too much. Why can't we rent a place for her nearby? I'll even pay for the first month's rent, I suggested, trying to keep my cool. "No, she'll be better off here. Plus, you can help with the kids and keep things clean," he said like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I'm not a babysitter, Brian. I work too, and I need to relax when I get home," I said, my frustration boiling over. "Stop being so selfish, Kelly. It's family, they need us," Brian said, his tone getting sharper. "I'm not being selfish, Brian. I'm just asking for a fair solution. I don't want my life turned upside down," I said, feeling my anger rise. "Well, they're coming tomorrow evening, so you better get used to the idea," he said, standing up and leaving the kitchen. I couldn't believe it. I felt completely blindsided and betrayed. The next morning, I woke up early, still fuming from our argument. I got dressed for work and went to grab my car keys, but they were nowhere to be found. When I called Brian, he answered, sounding way too calm for my liking. "I took the car. It's mine, remember? I'm giving it to Lauren so she can use it for the kids," he said. I was stunned into silence for a moment. "You're giving my car to Lauren? Are you serious right now?" "It's not your car, Kelly. I paid for it, and she needs it more than you do," he said, sounding matter-of-fact. "That's the last straw, Brian. You've taken everything from me, and I'm done," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "What are you talking about? Don't be dramatic, Kelly," he said, clearly not understanding. I stood there in the hallway, holding my phone, unable to believe what was happening. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. How had things gotten so bad? I picked up the phone and called a moving company. "Hi, I need a team to move some furniture and appliances today. It's urgent." The movers arrived a couple of hours later. I showed them around the house, pointing out the items to be moved. "Take everything, the beds, sofas, chandeliers, even the faucets in the bathroom." The movers got to work, and soon the house started to look empty. I felt a strange sense of relief watching them carry out each piece of furniture. As the last item was loaded onto the truck, I directed them to my mom's house. "Everything goes there. Thanks for the quick work, guys," I said, handing them a tip. With the house now bare, I grabbed my essentials and headed to my mom's place. A few hours later, my phone started buzzing. It was Brian calling repeatedly. I ignored the calls, feeling a mixture of anxiety and empowerment. That evening, there was a loud knock on my mom's door. I opened the door to find Brian standing there, looking furious. "What the hell, Kelly? What did you do?" he shouted as he stormed into the living room. "I took my stuff, Brian. You took the car, so I took what I bought," I said, keeping my voice calm. "This is insane. You stripped the house bare. Where are Lauren and the kids supposed to sleep?" he yelled, his face red with anger. "That's your problem, Brian. You made this mess. Now you deal with it," I replied, crossing my arms. "You're a thief, Kelly. You stole everything," he shouted, waving his arms around. "I didn't steal anything. Here are the receipts," I said, pulling out a folder and showing him the proof of purchase for all the furniture and appliances. He looked through the receipts, his anger turning to frustration. "Fine, Kelly. If this is how you want to play it, I'll file for divorce." I took a deep breath and handed him a stack of papers. "Already done. Here are the divorce papers. Sign them, and we're done." He stared at the papers, his face pale. "You're really serious about this, aren't you?" "Dead serious, Brian. I deserve better than this," I said, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. He took a pen from his pocket, signed the papers without another word, and handed them back to me. "Fine, Kelly. Have it your way." I watched as he turned and walked out of my mom's house, the door slamming behind him. I stood there for a moment, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. It was over, and I knew it was the right decision. That night, I sat down with my mom and talked about everything that had happened. She was supportive and agreed that I had made the right choice. "Kelly, you've been through a lot. It's time you focused on yourself and your happiness," she said, giving me a comforting hug. "Thanks, Mom. I just need some time to figure things out," I replied, feeling a weight lifted off my shoulders. Over the next few days, I started to settle into a new routine. I began organizing my new space at my mom's house and planning my next steps. It was a fresh start, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it. I had taken back my life, and there was no turning back. After divorcing Brian, we sold our house and split the money. It was time to set up my own place. My mom's house was great for a while, but I needed my own space. One afternoon, I was sitting in the kitchen with my mom, looking at listings on my laptop. "Mom, I think I found a place that looks perfect. It's a small apartment downtown, close to work," I said, showing her the pictures. She looked over my shoulder and smiled. "That looks nice, Kelly. Have you called the realtor yet?" "Not yet, but I'm going to do that right now," I said, feeling a bit excited. I dialed the number and waited for the realtor to pick up. After a few rings, a friendly voice answered. "Hello, this is Larry. How can I help you?" "Hi, Larry. My name is Kelly. I'm interested in the apartment you have listed downtown. Is it still available?" I asked, crossing my fingers. "Yes, it's still available. Would you like to schedule a viewing?" he replied, sounding hopeful. "Absolutely. How about tomorrow afternoon?" I suggested, trying to sound calm. "That works for me. I'll see you at 4 p.m., Larry said before we ended the call. The next day, I headed downtown to meet Larry and check out the apartment. When I arrived, he was waiting outside the building with a friendly smile on his face. "Hi, Kelly. Nice to meet you. Let me show you around," he said, shaking my hand. The apartment was small but cozy, just what I needed. It had a nice kitchen, a spacious living room, and a small balcony with a decent view of the city. "This place is perfect, Larry." "I'll take it," I said, feeling a sense of relief. After signing the lease and getting the keys, I started planning my move. I wanted to make this new space my own, a fresh start. I spent the next few days packing up my things at my mom's house and arranging for movers to help me with the big stuff. On moving day, my mom and a couple of close friends came over to help. As we loaded the last box into the moving truck, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness about this new chapter in my life. "Kelly, this is going to be great for you. A fresh start is just what you need," my mom said, giving me a reassuring hug. "Thanks, Mom. I'm really looking forward to it," I replied, smiling. We drove to my new apartment, and with everyone's help, we had everything unloaded and set up in no time. As I looked around my new space, I felt a sense of accomplishment and excitement for what lay ahead. I looked around my new place and felt a sense of pride and peace. It was the start of a new chapter, and I was ready for it. That evening, I invited my mom and friends to stay for dinner to celebrate the move. We ordered pizza and sat on the floor, surrounded by boxes and laughter. "Cheers to Kelly and her new place," my friend Julie said, raising her glass of soda. "Thanks, guys. I really appreciate all your help and support," I said, feeling grateful. As the night went on, we talked and laughed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy and free. After the party, as I sat on my balcony looking out at the city lights, I thought about everything I had been through and how far I had come. I was proud of myself for taking control of my life and making the changes I needed. I heard from some mutual friends that Brian used his share of the money to buy a small apartment. Now he's living there with Lauren and her 5 kids. Brian's working 2 jobs to keep up with the bills while Lauren still isn't working. They're fighting all the time. One day, out of the blue, Brian called me. I was surprised to see his name pop up on my phone, but I decided to answer, curious about what he had to say. "Hello, Brian. What's up?" I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Kelly, please just hear me out," he started, sounding desperate. "I know I messed up. I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't realize how hard it was for you with Lauren's kids." I couldn't help but laugh a little. "Really, Brian? You're realizing this now, after all this time?" "Yeah, I know it's late, but I'm serious. I've been thinking a lot, and I miss you. I miss us. Can we start over? I'm ready to move into your apartment and make things right," he said, his voice almost pleading. I chuckled, shaking my head in disbelief. "Brian, you've got to be kidding me. You think you can just waltz back into my life like nothing happened?" "Kelly, I'm serious. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll even take on more work to make it up to you," he said, sounding more desperate. "Brian, I've moved on. I'm happy now. I'm not looking to go back to that mess," I replied firmly. "Come on, Kelly. We can make it work this time. I've changed," he insisted. I sighed, feeling a mix of pity and frustration. "Brian, it's over. You need to focus on your life and your family." "I'm not interested in going back to that chaos," I said, trying to stay calm but firm. "Kelly, please, I'm begging you," Brian said, his voice breaking with desperation. "Brian, no. I've found peace without you, and I'm not giving that up," I said, standing my ground. "Take care, Brian. I hope you find your way." I hung up the phone, feeling a strange mix of relief and closure. It was clear that Brian was struggling, but I couldn't let his problems drag me back into a situation I had worked so hard to escape. Later that day, I met up with Julie for coffee and told her about the call. We sat in our favorite little cafe, the aroma of fresh coffee and baked goods filling the air. "You won't believe who called me today," I said, rolling my eyes as I stirred my coffee. "Who?" Julie asked, raising an eyebrow and leaning in with curiosity. "Brian. He actually begged me to take him back and let him move into my apartment," I said, shaking my head in disbelief. Julie burst out laughing, nearly spilling her coffee. "Are you serious? What did you say?" I told him no, of course. "I'm not going back to that mess," I replied, smiling at the absurdity of the situation. We spent the rest of the afternoon chatting and laughing, and I realized just how far I had come since my life with Brian. I had built a new life for myself, one that was peaceful and fulfilling. I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. The cafe was a cozy spot, with warm lighting and soft music playing in the background, creating the perfect setting for our heart-to-heart conversation. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the city, we decided to take a walk along the river. The cool breeze was refreshing, and the sound of water flowing gently against the banks added a calming effect to our stroll. "I can't believe how much has changed in just a few months," I said, looking out over the water, the lights from the buildings reflecting off the surface like tiny stars. "You've come a long way, Kelly. I'm really proud of you," Julie said, giving me a supportive pat on the back. "You're stronger than you think you know." "Thanks, Julie. I feel like I've finally closed that chapter of my life," I said, a sense of relief washing over me as we continued to walk. "I'm ready to move forward with confidence and joy." The next few days were busy but fulfilling. I started to settle into a new routine and began organizing my new space at my mom's house. It felt good to have my own place again, even if it was temporary. My mom's house was warm and welcoming, and she was incredibly supportive during this transition period. I spent a lot of time decorating my room, making it feel like my own little sanctuary. I put up some of my favorite artwork, arranged my books on the shelves, and set up a cozy reading nook by the window. It was a space where I could relax and feel at peace, away from the chaos and stress of the past. One evening, as I was unpacking the last of my boxes, my mom came into the room with 2 cups of tea. "Thought you might need a break," she said, handing me a cup and sitting down on the edge of the bed. "Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it," I said, taking a sip of the warm tea. It was soothing, and the familiar taste brought a sense of comfort. "You've been through a lot, Kelly. It's time you focused on yourself and your happiness," she said, giving me a comforting hug. "You deserve it." "I just need some time to figure things out," I replied, feeling a weight lifted off my shoulders as I looked around my new space. Over the next few days, I continued to adjust to my new life. I started planning my next steps, looking into new opportunities and setting goals for the future. It felt like a fresh start, and for the first time in a long time, I was genuinely excited about what lay ahead. One afternoon, I decided to go for a walk in the nearby park. The weather was perfect, with a gentle breeze and clear blue skies. As I walked along the tree-lined paths, I thought about all the changes I had made and how far I had come. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction and peace, knowing that I was on the right path. I bumped into some old friends while walking and ended up spending the afternoon catching up with them. It was great to reconnect and share my experiences, and they were happy to see that I was doing well. We talked about old times, laughed about silly memories, and made plans to meet up more often. It was comforting to know that I had a strong support system and people who cared about me. As the sun set, I headed back to my mom's house, feeling content and hopeful. I knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but I was ready to face it with courage and determination. I had taken back control of my life, and I wasn't going to let anyone or anything disrupt my newfound peace and happiness. "You're so gloomy. We don't need you here." My boss, a woman who didn't know much and didn't care to learn, belittled me. I sighed, looking at her smug face. "Well then, I quit," I said, and left the company. Months later, I ran into that awful woman again. "Did you ever find a company that would hire someone as useless as you?" she mocked. "Yes, actually, your major client," I replied. Her face went pale as she realized what I meant. "My name is Scott Ritter, and I'm a salesman at a food and beverage company. I'm over 43 years old and work in sales, but in a different way. I don't go out for client visits. I just work on the computer at my desk by the window." "Good morning, Scott." "Good morning, Paul." "Scott, we're going out for drinks after work today. Would you like to join us?" "Thank you for the invite, but I have other plans." "Got it." I didn't talk much with other employees and spent most of my time in front of the computer. Everyone else was younger, which partly explained why I didn't fit in with their conversations. Scott always dresses so neatly right. His clothes are always ironed perfectly, and his shirts are crisp. And he smells good too. It's not perfume, maybe fabric softener. I wonder what brand he uses. I noticed them glancing my way and chatting a few times, but I never asked what they were talking about. I just kept working. Time to clock out already. "Good work today." "Yes, good work today." Scott always leaves right on time, so we know when it's time to go. In a way, he's like an alarm clock for us. I left work on time every day. Sometimes I had places to go after work, and sometimes I just went straight home. "Would you like to join our company?" "Yes, thank you. I'd love to." I joined this company about 5 years ago. Before that, I worked at a different beverage company, but I was approached to join this one. I never stayed long at one company, moving around in the beverage industry. "Scott, how have things been since you started?" "Fine, no major issues. Everything is going smoothly for now." "That's good to hear. We have high hopes for your work." "Thank you." It was a company executive who had approached me. He had heard about me and reached out. It seems this company often recruits from outside. Well, Scott, do you have a moment? Sure, I'm available. I wanted to ask you about sales strategies. If it's something I know, I'll send you the information you need. Thank you. I'll email you later. I'd like to learn more about Company D and a few other things, said Pamela. Got it, Scott. You're the same as always, she replied, understanding my usual straightforward approach. Just then, Michael approached as the younger colleagues were chatting with me. Michael Phelps is the only colleague close to my age in sales, and he's the one who brought me to this company. That's right, thanks for your help with that issue. I'll be counting on you again, I said. Got it. Also, the client wants to go out for drinks next time. Understood. Michael and I had known each other before joining this company, so we could communicate with just a few words. As the only other senior employee, he handled a lot of different tasks. Michael is attentive and single, which makes him quite popular. Let's keep up the good work today, he said, as we enjoyed another peaceful day in the sales department with no major issues. Nice to meet you. I'm Laura Sanko, and I'll be the new department head starting today, she introduced herself when she was transferred to our team. Laura came from a larger affiliated company, and it seemed she had more experience from her previous position. Is that so? Maybe it's a matter of power, someone commented. Who knows, but she's our boss now, so let's hope we can work well together. I sighed quietly as I observed Laura. She was wearing bright red clothes that didn't seem very professional, with heavy makeup and a strong perfume that reached my desk. Her attitude was confident and assertive. Listen to what I say. I'm in a higher position than you, she said, making her authority clear. The thought of her being the boss made me uneasy. Hey, who prepared this document? She asked. Yes, that was me. Read this document, and the client you're handling will now be my responsibility. Am I really changing this now? What's wrong with this document? Figure it out yourself. Look, it's easier to read this way, but in our company, we usually just do as I say, she insisted, making sure everyone in the sales department followed her lead because of her background in a big corporation. She's really the worst. She's all friendly with the young men and Michael, but she's tough on us women, a colleague whispered. I'm just trying to stay out of her way, I replied. It's tough, but let's support each other and get through this. Everyone followed her instructions reluctantly to avoid unnecessary trouble. Sighing, Michael asked, What's wrong? It's about Laura, our manager, as he invited me out for drinks on a rare day off. He sighed heavily, looking genuinely troubled. Laura has been really on my case lately. Every day she's asking me out. I see, I get it, I replied, understanding his situation. It seemed she often invited him out for drinks or meals. Michael looks young for his age, so Laura didn't seem to mind the age difference. He's not comfortable with romantic relationships and has his own reasons for staying single, so being pursued like this was a real burden for him. When I talk to female colleagues, Laura scolds them. That's troublesome. Exactly, Michael agreed, clearly struggling with Laura's behavior too. He sighed wearily. Upper management isn't much help either. Yeah, I tried talking to them once, and they were pretty indifferent about it. It's really affecting me. The whole atmosphere in the sales department has changed. Who knows what will happen next? As expected, the sales department went from being peaceful to tense. Everyone was trying not to get on Laura's bad side. Hey, you, she called out. Yes. Don't just sit at your computer all day. Get out and work. I am working though. I have told you to go out and visit your clients. Since I've been here, I haven't seen you leave the office even once. And yet, you're always dressed up. That's when Laura started targeting me. She glanced at my computer, clearly not understanding what I was doing. You're not doing any work, are you? I am doing my job. She thought I was slacking off. Besides, you hardly talk to anyone in the office. You just say hello and nothing more. Everyone is busy, so I try not to disturb them, I explained, preferring to communicate through email and chat. That's also how I heard about her rumors and complaints. Really, you're so gloomy. You're in sales, but you're glued to your computer, not going out for field work, not interacting with other staff. And you're always dressed in mismatched clothes, leaving right on time. Are you taking your job lightly? Laura seemed to really dislike me, constantly picking on me and making snide remarks. Scott, are you okay? Laura was hard on you today, right? I'm fine, I replied. She's focused on me right now, so it's been easier for the rest of you. Let me know if you need anything. We're here to help. Thank you, everyone. The sales staff noticed what was happening and showed their concern. They often intervened by saying things like, "There's work to do," or "A customer is here," to pull her away. Aside from Laura, I had good relationships with others. What's with that manager? She complains about Scott leaving on time, but she leaves early too. It's true. I saw her at a bar the other day. Me too. She was drinking a lot. How much does she spend on drinks? Apparently, she was drinking with business partners, and it's all being paid for with company money. Really? More and more, the talk about her wasn't about her work skills, but rather unpleasant rumors. Are you okay? I'm fine. If her bothering me gives you all a chance to work, then it's okay. I'm really sorry if anything happens. I'll help out, and you know what's going on. You've changed jobs a lot, haven't you? If you ever decide to leave, could you let me know? I nodded, and Michael said, "Thank you," and walked away. Unlike me, Michael has always been the type to stay in one place, but it seemed this situation was making him reconsider. A few months after Laura arrived, there was trouble. The sales department's expenses had increased, leading to orders for cost-cutting. Why have the expenses gone up? Now we're told to cut costs. It's ridiculous, Laura complained. But the rise in expenses was her fault. Her excessive spending on entertainment was causing the increase. Everyone knew she was frequently out drinking. I don't want to cut back on entertainment expenses. If they're cut, I won't be able to drink as much. It's your fault, Scott. Why me? You're not working. Having you here is a waste of expenses and salary. You're stealing company money. I was being unfairly accused. I was just doing the job I was assigned. She didn't understand it, but I believed my work was important. To cut costs, I'll start by cutting you. What a mess. You're so gloomy. We don't need you. Pack up your things and get out of the company. Is that an order from the boss? Yes, you're fired, she said with a smirk. I just sighed. Then I quit. Don't ever come back to this office. Getting rid of an incompetent employee will save us money. Without much resistance, I packed my things and left the company. Are you really quitting? Why so suddenly? Laura said I was fired. Well, if she said so, maybe there's no other way. Even the executives couldn't stop Laura's actions, given her connections to a larger company. It seemed inevitable. That day, I resigned and left the company. Scott, please come back to our company. We need you here. We'll talk to the manager. Read numerous messages on my phone, all begging me to return. But I had been fired, and there was nothing I could do about it. If you're not here, I don't know how to proceed with our business strategy, a female colleague said cheerfully over the phone. I appreciate everyone's words, but I've been let go. Don't say that, she replied, but as much as I felt for my trusting colleagues, there wasn't much I could do. I already had my sights set on another company, so I stuck to my decision and said goodbye to my colleagues. Well then, Scott, are you okay? Pamela asked. Actually, I was about to contact you. After reaching out to a certain company, I immediately got a call from Michael. He had been out on sales visits and was unaware of what had happened recently. I heard from everyone, are you really quitting, Mark? Michael asked. That's right. Do you have another job lined up? Yes, fortunately. Scott, we've known each other since our previous job, but I have a favor to ask. I've already talked about you. Michael, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. A few months after leaving that company, I found myself at a high-end restaurant for a business meeting. Honestly, the person I was meeting today was a bit difficult to deal with. As I waited at the entrance, I heard a familiar voice. Well, long time no see. Laura Sanko appeared, smirking. Oh look, it's the gloomy window seat guy, she said in a condescending tone. What are you doing here? Surely not eating, right? You couldn't possibly afford a meal here, could you? She mocked. Did you ever find a company that would hire someone as useless as you? She continued, clearly unaware of my current situation. Well, actually, it can't be anything important, right? She interrupted, not giving me a chance to explain. She continued with her mocking laughter. What would a useless non-worker like you be doing at such a high-end restaurant? Are you part of the cleaning staff? It's just like you to try to look cool. It doesn't suit you at all. I'm not part of the cleaning staff. I'm here for work today. Work, huh? That's a word for people who actually work hard, like me, not for incompetents like you, she sneered. Today I came here as a sales manager for a business meeting, not like you, who just sits at a computer. As I grew tired of her endless chatter, someone approached us. Hey, sorry I'm late. I've been waiting for you, Director Charles. It was Charles, the director from the major restaurant chain Bloom Dining. I shook hands with Charles, and Laura suddenly bowed her head. Director Charles, thank you very much for your valuable time today. Seeing that it was Director Charles, Laura quickly started to butter him up, showing just how important this business meeting was for her company. Hi, Laura. Looking forward to working together. But really, if both of you had arrived earlier, you could have waited inside, Charles said to me with a friendly smile. Laura looked confused. What? Scott is involved in this business, she muttered under her breath, clearly shocked. Shall we go inside, then? Charles suggested. Yes, let's, Laura replied, still trying to process what was happening. Prompted by Charles, we proceeded into the restaurant and were guided to a private room. What's going on here? Laura whispered to me, still confused. Don't rush, you'll understand soon, I whispered back, making sure Charles didn't hear. Once inside the private room and after the attendant had left, I prepared my business card. It was time to clear up the confusion. Here is my business card, I said, handing it to Laura. What? Really? Laura's eyes widened as she looked at the card. It read, Scott Murphy, head of Bloom Dining Food Research Department. You asked earlier if there was a place that would hire me. Well, I was picked up by your major client, I said with a smile. Laura's face turned increasingly pale. After leaving that company, I had contacted Charles. I had known Charles for a while and had previously received an invitation from him. I'm glad you joined us, Scott, Charles said. Thank you. I look forward to working with you. The pleasure is ours. We're grateful to have someone with your talents join us. We'll be counting on you. Yes, I'll do my best. So I joined Bloom Dining and took on the responsibilities entrusted to me. Just like at my previous company, my work was recognized, leading to a smooth promotion to my current position as the head of the department. Is that really possible? Laura mumbled, still in disbelief. Is something the matter? I asked. No, it's nothing, she replied, shaking her head with a pale face. She couldn't believe that the person she had deemed incompetent and fired had now become the head of a department in a major corporation. It can't be right. You are the incompetent, gloomy one. Laura was stunned. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered to herself. The reality that her business negotiation partner was someone she had ridiculed and treated poorly, and the fact that her company was now in a weaker position, seemed to overwhelm her. It was a complete reversal of our previous situation when she had fired me. Now, it was time to see her skills in business. So well, she stammered. How are things going with this matter? Charles asked. Laura seemed unable to deliver her usual smooth sales pitch, glancing at me often, still shocked by the earlier revelation. Eventually, she left the meeting in disarray. Did you know Laura? She seemed quite concerned about you, Charles asked after we saw her off. Actually, she's the one who fired me from my previous job, calling me a gloomy incompetent. Really? Charles responded, clearly surprised. I then shared the whole story of my previous job with him. What a rude person she is, Charles said, sounding indignant, as if it were a personal insult. Regarding this deal, I don't want to work with such a disrespectful person in the future. Let's get someone else to handle it. Yes, let's proceed with the negotiations once the representative is changed. All right, I'll make sure to communicate that, I assured him. Charles and I decided to request a change of representative from Laura's company. Given our company's stronger position, it was likely that Laura would face some repercussions. Later on, a former colleague filled me in about what happened with Laura at her company. The executives confronted her, asking, "What do you mean by changing the person in charge as a manager?" It turns out the sales staff who had been putting up with her behavior reported her past actions to the executives, including the incident where she fired me. They told her, "We have refrained from reprimanding you because you're from an affiliated company, but this time we will have to report back to your parent company." The look on Laura's face was ashen. "Is that so? Thanks for letting me know." "Not at all. I owe you, Scott," my former colleague replied, smiling and relieved at how things had turned out. Sometime later, I got a call from the executives of my former company. "Scott, would you consider coming back to us?" they asked. Apparently, they were rethinking my employment. After I left, the work I did in the sales department was reevaluated, and there was a noticeable decline in the department's performance, prompting an investigation. I had been researching long-term business strategies for clients, staying up to date with recent trends, and explaining these in a clear way to the sales team. I also advised on sales strategies, which is why I was always at my computer. Besides that, I was checking the financial status of all our business partners and managing the accounts receivable to make sure they didn't become bad debts. I would meet with representatives from current and potential clients to gather information, often over drinks. I was uncovering hidden needs in other companies and providing feedback to the sales team. That's why I dressed well after work, which made transitioning to major corporations easier. You really did significant work. You're in demand everywhere, aren't you? Not really, but I do get to see various companies because of it. How about this? We can offer you more than double your previous salary. Double my previous salary would be a substantial amount, but I said, "I'm sorry, I can't trust a company that tolerated her behavior to such an extent, and I'm happy with my current job." With that, I ignored their plea to reconsider and declined the offer to return. I heard our manager came for negotiations for us. Charles is our director now. Oh, my apologies. Michael was the first to approach me with this news. When I was fired, Michael decided to switch to Bloom Dining and joined the sales team after me. He had been with the previous company for many years, but had enough of dealing with Laura. He thought about moving to another company like I did. My firing was the trigger for him to join Bloom Dining. Interestingly, Charles, after hearing from me, was ready to hire Michael on the spot, but the dedicated Michael went through a formal interview to join our team. Originally a talented salesman, Michael now excels at Bloom Dining too. "Scott, please listen." "Calm down, Helen," I said. Helen, a female employee from my former department who cried when she learned I had left, still seemed to admire me. "I've been assigned the research tasks you used to handle. Can you teach me?" "Really? Taking over the tasks from a company I left is..." "Please, I really want to improve our sales." Despite my hesitation, I was moved by Helen's eagerness and decided to teach her. "So this is how it works." "Yes, that's how it works." Our relationship resembled that of a teacher and student due to the age difference. "We're really like teacher and student." "Yes, it would be something like this if I had a student." "Thank you, Professor. Teach me too, Professor." "Please don't call me that, Brian." When we met occasionally for lessons, another former colleague, Brian, wanted to join, eager to learn my sales techniques. I thought, with these two, that company will be okay. I was relieved to see them positively trying to learn, just like before. They could form a great team, much like Michael and I did in the past. As for Laura, she ended up returning to her original company as a regular employee. However, her lavish lifestyle and love for drinking couldn't be supported by her regular salary, so she secretly started working at nightclubs. But moonlighting was against her company's rules, and once they found out, she was fired. Now, Laura is struggling to attract clients because of her haughty attitude, and she isn't earning much. It's a sort of poetic justice, a case of cause and effect. I saw her looking rough in downtown recently. She caused a lot of trouble for others, so now it's her turn to face difficulties. Laura, who once fired me, now faces her own set of hardships. She wouldn't have thought this would happen back then. She even contacted me using the business card I gave her. Could you hire me at Bloom Dining? She asked. That's impossible. At least contact Michael, I told her. She contacted me too many times and was becoming a nuisance, so I passed her messages to Michael. He replied, I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in people like you, and frankly, I dislike you. Please don't contact me or my colleagues in the future. To be honest, I don't want to hear from you again. Michael clearly refused her, and after she kept trying to reach out to him, Michael contacted his lawyer. She was then placed under a restraining order and could no longer approach him. Being popular can be troublesome, but I never wanted this kind of attention. Michael and I had worked together at one of the companies during my job-hopping days. He had been engaged, but after his fiancé died in a car accident, he remained single. Since then, he understood the nature of my work and began relying on me. Now, he's thriving as a skilled senior in sales. Meanwhile, I'm grateful to be using my skills at Bloom Dining, where I conduct research with a more generous budget than before. Thanks to my efforts, Bloom Dining's default rate decreased significantly, and we were able to understand our clients' needs in more detail, leading to increased contract rates. It was definitely the right decision to bring you on board. You've made a significant difference, Charles said. I'm glad to be of service to the company. Everyone praises you. They said contracts became much easier to secure because you identify the needs so precisely. That's good to hear. I just did what I could. I'm really glad I joined this company. Meanwhile, back at my former company, I heard that Helen had taken over my research tasks and was doing a great job. Brian informed me her research skills are second only to yours, Scott. Is that so? She did learn quickly. When I was teaching her, I thought, I can't let her outdo me. Brian chuckled, feeling motivated by the competition. It seems they've become good motivators for each other, and their research efforts have helped stabilize the sales department. Helen is like Scott's student. Her methods are just like yours. And you, Michael, you've been teaching Brian, right? That's true. While I was teaching Helen, Michael also gave advice to Brian whenever he could. Looks like it's time for a generational shift. Maybe, but since we're at different companies, we'll stay rivals for a while longer. Indeed, we can't afford to lose. Flashy jobs are easily noticed from the outside, but the supportive roles behind the scenes are just as important for a company's growth. While some in sales secure contracts, it's the administrative staff who provide crucial support. Cleaners keep the office and common areas tidy, contributing to the overall function. An organization can grow because it has employees fulfilling various roles. It's often unclear who is doing what and how they contribute to the work. However, it's important to approach each role without prejudice and strive to understand the contribution of each member. Leaders, especially, should never forget this. I got pregnant with the boss's kid and will soon become his wife. At that moment, something inside me snapped. Michelle, my husband's mistress, had been mocking me, showing off her youth and trying to prove she was better than me. She even took my job as the president's secretary, and now she wants my husband too. I decided I wouldn't hold back anymore. I was determined to make them both suffer. I signed the divorce papers that Scott gave me, but I got a lot of money in return. Scott and Michelle got married in France with a grand ceremony. A week later, I got a call from Michelle. "Hey, Scott hasn't come home. As his ex-wife, you must know where he is, right?" Michelle's voice was frantic. I laughed maliciously. Just as I had expected, I kept quiet, but I exposed Scott's terrible secrets. "My name is Kelly. I'm 61 years old and work as the president's secretary at my husband Scott's company. Every day, I wake up at 7 a.m., earlier than my husband, to prepare breakfast. Then I go to work alone, tidying up and cleaning the president's office to make sure Scott works comfortably. At 9 a.m., Scott arrives at the office. "Thank you, Kelly, you cleaned again today," he says. I approach him and retie his tie. "It's fine, dear. You want to work in a clean room, right?" I reply, "That's right," he answers. Scott and I were introduced by an acquaintance. We haven't had children, but we've lived together, supporting each other for 31 years. The company, taken over by Scott from his father-in-law, is stable, and I've had no complaints about our life. By the way, the new business you planned, Johnny is going to fund it. The transfer was confirmed earlier, Scott tells me. "That's great. John seems to like you." "Your negotiating helped a lot," I respond. The company is run by Scott as the president and his brother, Johnny, as the chairman. Scott calls him John. "Remember, Johnny funded another business you planned before. Aren't you proceeding with that?" I ask. I casually asked Scott, and he looked annoyed. "It's fine, I'll handle it." "Nothing special on today's schedule, right?" he said. "Yes, because you mentioned it before," I replied. Scott smiled contentedly. "Good, good. Then, Kelly, there's someone I want to introduce to you. I'll bring them here, so wait for me." "Understood," I said, feeling uneasy about his words. Soon, I heard laughter from the hallway, Scott's voice and another, younger woman's voice. As I wondered about their friendly demeanor, the office door opened. "Kept you waiting, huh, Kelly?" Scott said, looking pleased. But I was too focused on the woman sitting next to him to respond. She was very young, with long, neatly arranged hair. She wore a miniskirt that revealed her thighs and a camisole that exposed her chest. It was like she was dressed for a night out, but she wore it confidently. I was astounded by her youth. "This is Michelle. She'll be working here from today," Scott said. "Nice to meet you," Michelle added. I was dumbfounded. Was this a joke? My husband introducing a young woman to me was hard enough to handle. Moreover, we don't hire fresh graduates. "Excuse me, but how old is Michelle?" I asked. "She's 24. I met her at a bar with friends. We hit it off. She's young and fresh and gives me energy. Don't you think she'll boost the morale of our employees?" "Ah, yes," I managed to say, seeing my husband's radiant expression. "Then, Kelly, please teach Michelle the ropes." "Michelle is going to work as a general employee, right? Then wouldn't it be better if—" I started. "Oh, I forgot to mention, we're going to have 2 secretaries from now on. So please teach Michelle the secretary work." "2 secretaries? Is that necessary?" I asked, feeling a pang in my heart. "Well, you're getting on in years. It's okay to pass on work to the younger ones." Scott laughed lightly, and it hurt. "The way you say it," I thought to myself. "Then take care. I'm going out for a bit on a personal errand. I'm counting on you to show her the ropes." With that, Scott left Michelle and me alone in the office. I took a deep breath to calm myself. Once Scott decides on something, he tends to rush into it and often regrets it later. This has happened many times throughout our marriage. It's useless to argue at times like this. For now, I'll just do as he says. It's bound not to work out anyway. "Hey, Kelly," Michelle tapped my shoulder. "Yes," I replied. "How old are you, Kelly?" she asked. It felt wrong not to answer after asking her age. I told her the truth. I'll be 61 this year, but my sincere feelings didn't reach Michelle. "What? You're as old as my grandmother," Poor thing, you could die any time and yet you still work. That's kind of sad, she said. I gave a wry smile. I like my job. It's not sad. Oh, I see. The sad one is the boss, right? Whether he's at home or at work, he's always with an old woman. Really poor thing. With each word, my face grew more strained. What exactly are you trying to say? You don't get it. I guess when you get older, your brain starts to slow down. Michelle let out a big sigh and said clearly, being young and beautiful, I have higher status than an old lady like you. You understand, right? Her smile was full of confidence, and I shivered. I couldn't stay silent any longer. You know, you should learn some common sense. Did I make you angry? Is it menopause? She asked. You get angry so quickly. It must be hard to keep working if you get upset over such things. Plus, with menopause, you sweat a lot and get short of breath, right? It's embarrassing to try so hard. Maybe it's time for you to retire. As I stood there, dumbfounded, Michelle laughed and whispered in my ear, Why don't you retire as president's wife too? I shuddered. This person intended to take Scott away from me. I couldn't help but raise my voice. Enough is enough. With that kind of intention, I can't teach you anything. Leave the company right now. I expected a quarrel, but Michelle looked at me with tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I just wanted to get along with you, Kelly, and made a joke, but it was too much. Too much. Michelle collapsed to the floor, sobbing like the heroine of a tragedy. I'll leave this company. Thank you for everything. Michelle ran out of the room. What is happening? Overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events, I stood there dumbfounded until Michelle returned with a red-faced Scott in tow. What are you doing? His sudden yell made me tremble. What's wrong, dear? I heard from Michelle you yelled at her. It's because she said something terrible. Don't lie. I've been listening to your conversation. Michelle had recorded our argument on her mobile phone. The recording started from the moment I scolded Michelle, giving the impression that I suddenly blamed her without reason and made her cry. That's why she apologized so sincerely, sobbing and all. I bit my lip in frustration. You don't believe me. Believe Michelle. She came to me crying about what you did. There's a recording. It's clear whose words have more credibility. A secretary who bullies employees is fired as of today. I couldn't believe it. I had always supported Scott both at home and at work. Now he was abandoning me for Michelle, who just joined the company. Wait, then who will do the secretary's job? I asked. It's decided. Michelle will do it, Scott said. That's impossible. And what about you? I swallowed the words that almost slipped out and tried again in a way only Scott and I would understand. You know about your hobby. I'll handle that myself. I prefer pure and cute Michelle over you, who lies to me. Besides, a young and beautiful girl like her suits me better than you do, don't you think? Scott narrowed his eyes happily and looked at Michelle beside him. She looked up at Scott with adoration and flashed a brilliant smile. Then she turned to me and stuck out her tongue just a little. I protested to Scott many times, but he wouldn't listen. The job of a secretary is not easy, despite my insistence that Michelle couldn't handle it. All I got back were his overly optimistic words, saying it was an exaggeration or you won't know until you try. He must have thought he was a knight protecting his princess. I was speechless at his foolishness, hardly what you'd expect from someone running a company. Eventually, Scott threw out my personal items from my workspace. Instead, he arranged a brand new desk and cute stationery for young people, all for Michelle. It was all in vain. Realizing this, I decided not to waste any more effort and left the company. However, Scott didn't come home that night. He didn't return my calls either. I thought it was just his way of getting back at me, but as a week, a month, and then 5 months passed, I grew anxious. One day, I was called to the company by Scott and was heading to the president's office. Maybe he finally understood how hard the secretary's job was and decided to let Michelle go and call me back. I knocked on the president's office door with a sliver of hope. "Come in," Scott said. As I opened the door, I was met with an unbelievable scene. Scott, smiling happily, was holding hands with Michelle beside him. The two of them looked at me and laughed joyously. "It's been a while, Kelly. We have some big news today," Scott said. "What is it?" I asked. Actually, then Michelle put her hand over Scott's mouth. "Let me say it, okay? I want to thank the wife, right?" Scott nodded deeply, and Michelle said to me with a beaming smile, "We're getting married. Thank you for everything you've done for Scott." "What?" In front of my shaking self, Scott laughed sheepishly. "No," I thought. "There's no point in hiding it. I'm thinking of starting a second life. You're getting too old. It's better for you to live quietly by yourself." "What? How dare you?" I felt as if all the blood had drained from my body. "Wait a minute, Kelly, the talk isn't over yet. Here, a present," Michelle said, handing me a few sheets of paper. They were printed with black and white photos. Seeing them made me feel sick. "This ultrasound. Don't tell me," I started. Michelle nodded slowly and gently stroked her belly as she came closer and whispered in my ear, "I got pregnant with Scott's child. I'll be taking over as the president's wife." She laughed. At that moment, something inside me snapped. She had mocked me, flaunted her youth, and tried to assert her superiority at every turn. She even took my job as the president's secretary, and now she's aiming for Scott. Well, I won't hold back anymore. I'll make sure they both suffer. I signed the divorce papers that Scott handed me. Of course, I received a hefty compensation. They had a grand wedding in France. Things changed a week later when I got a call from Michelle. "Hey, Scott hasn't come home. As his ex-wife, you must know where he is, right?" Michelle's voice was frantic. I laughed maliciously. Just as I had expected, I kept quiet for a moment, then said, "Scott is probably in San Jose right now." "San Jose? Ever heard of it? There's this big hotel in San Jose with a casino. Scott always rushes there whenever he has a chance," I explained. Michelle gasped. "Does that mean?" "Yes, Scott is probably indulging in gambling right now." I was the one who carefully scheduled his time to prevent him from getting too involved. It seems the new secretary was kept in the dark. He didn't want to show his bad side, spending the money he earned on gambling. Michelle was silent, seemingly in shock. I let out a small laugh. "I'm actually thankful to you." "What?" Michelle asked. "Scott started getting into gambling these past few years. It seems someone from a new business partner invited him," I said. "And what about it?" she asked. "Before you came along, there was still a bit of affection left in Scott. I was worried about him falling deeper, but now I've completely cut him off. Taking such a low man off my hands, and even giving me a hefty compensation, there couldn't have been a better opportunity. Thanks to you, I can enjoy my second life." I laughed heartily. I could hear Michelle breathing heavily over the phone. "Don't you dare joke about this," she shouted. "Goodbye. You have a tough road ahead as the president's wife," I said. I said sarcastically and hung up on Michelle, ignoring her shouting from the other end. A few days later, as I was relaxing in my new condo, the doorbell rang. Could it be a delivery? I haven't ordered anything, I thought, feeling suspicious. I looked through the peephole and saw my ex-husband, Scott, his face red with anger. "You're there, aren't you, Kelly? How dare you tell Michelle about the gambling?" Understanding the situation, I decided to let Scott in. He must have hired a detective to find my address. Running away now would only lead to him chasing me again. I might as well settle things here. I had important information to share with him. I prepared a clear file of documents before opening the door. "It's been a while, hasn't it?" I greeted him with a graceful smile. "What do you mean, it's been a while? After you ruined my family, how can you still smile?" Scott was furious, shouting and trying to intimidate me. But such tactics didn't work on a wife of many years. Why are you so red-faced? What happened? It's none of your business, he snapped. I chuckled. He came here just to vent his anger, but I could see through what had happened between them. You must have had a fight with your wife. Shut up. Michelle must be unhappy with most of your income going to gambling. She told you she would manage the finances, and you're on an allowance now, right? Scott froze in shock. How? How do you know that? Did you plant a bug or something? He asked seriously, and I burst into laughter. You did the same thing with me when your gambling came to light. You said, "What's wrong with spending the money I earned on my hobby?" You must have repeated the same with Michelle, leading to a fight, and now you're taking it out on me. Scott clenched his fists and fell silent. Don't underestimate a wife of 31 years, I thought to myself, seeing his frustrated face. You should be thankful I managed your schedule as your secretary. I minimized your gambling time to save you from ruin. Can a naive 25-year-old do that? Well, he started. You have no choice but to let her try. You're having a child after all. At that word, Scott's face lit up. Yes, Michelle and I are having a child. Unlike you, who's infertile, she can give me an heir. You lost as a woman. Scott looked down on me triumphantly. That's great for you. We're happy, I said. Don't try to ruin my family again. I came here to warn you today. Scott pointed at me, saying so. I tilted my head, puzzled. Me ruin it? I have no such intention. In fact, I'm thinking of helping you. Help me? Scott looked confused. Did you go with Michelle to the gynecologist? Huh? That place is for women. Michelle said she wanted to go alone, so I didn't go with her. You saw the ultrasound photo, right? The glossy, thick photo paper. No, the one I saw was just thin, regular paper. I thought so, I said, presenting Scott with several photos from a clear file. They were grainy black and white ultrasound images. Scott's eyes widened. What? You're pregnant? Of course not. This was a gift from Michelle. She's quite prepared, isn't she? Printing these out from the internet for me. Internet? Scott looked puzzled. I handed him a piece of paper. It was a printout of a blog post from 3 years ago, a pregnancy announcement with ultrasound photos. Compare this with the photo Michelle showed you. Notice anything? Scott looked back and forth between the photo and the article. His face turned pale. You don't mean? That's right. The copied photo from the article matches Michelle's ultrasound photo. Holding them up to the light, the baby silhouette matches perfectly. Do you know about image search? It's a feature that searches the internet for images similar to the one you have. I found this blog using it. She must have copied the article directly, cutting out the photo neatly. So the child, Scott went pale, looking like he might collapse. I decided it was time to deliver the final blow. It's a lie. There's no baby. Scott collapsed to his knees. No, that can't be. She wouldn't lie about something like that. Impossible. After everything I bought for her designer clothes, bags, even an expensive engagement ring. Scott vented his confused emotions by repeatedly hitting the floor with his fist. His actions were so ridiculous I couldn't help but smile. It's a shame you couldn't become a father. Considering your age, it's doubtful you could have fathered a child. Thinking a young partner would guarantee a child was naive. Ask Michelle for the truth. I'll call her over now. Scott was too drained to argue. He just slumped there, silent. I had Michelle come to the condominium. Soon after, the doorbell rang, and I opened the door. Upon seeing me with Scott, she screamed. What are you doing here? Trying to take Scott back from me? No. Didn't I say I was thankful to you? I have a baby in my belly. You can't tear us apart, Michelle screamed triumphantly. Not listening to me, she entered and gently embraced Scott's shoulder. Are you okay? Let's go back and talk about the money, she said. I'll manage the finances. That's okay, right? We'll overcome this together. After all, I'm carrying our child, Michelle said. Shut up. Scott slowly stood up, looking at Michelle intently. The pregnancy is a lie, isn't it? Michelle's face contorted. What are you talking about, honey? Tell me the truth, Michelle. The pregnancy is real. I showed you the ultrasound photo. Our child is the fruit of our love. How can you deny that? Michelle sat on the floor, crying, then glared sharply at me. You must have filled his head with weird ideas. You're just jealous because you're old and I'm young and beautiful. I laughed. Is that all you have to say? Hey, Scott, let's just go home, okay? Michelle tried to pull Scott's arm, but he brushed her off. Enough, Michelle. Scott thrust the blog post copy and the ultrasound photo at her. There's no escaping the truth now. I trusted you. How could you lie about something like this? I was so happy I cried. Michelle's expression changed. Hey, Scott. She looked at me with wet eyes, seeking sympathy. I just wanted to test your love for me. I was afraid I was just being played with. That's why I said I was pregnant. Then, Scott, you said you wanted me to have it, right? I was so happy. Michelle's radiant smile left Scott speechless. So the lie was because you love me. That's right. We can start working on having a child now. My beauty and your brains will make a wonderful child who'll eventually become a president and earn lots of money. That's not going to happen, I said, bringing Scott and Michelle back to reality. Hey, we're having a moment here, Michelle snapped. Do you really think this man has money? Of course, he's a president after all. I see. Our company has been passed down through generations and isn't doing badly, but that's about the company as a whole. This man is a gambler. Do you understand what that means? Michelle's face turned pale as she clung to Scott. Hey, Scott, you're rich, right? You told me once we're married we live a wealthy life because you have more money than you know what to do with. Scott responded in a faltering voice. It's okay. I've lost some money gambling, but we're starting a new business soon. That'll be our big break. What are you talking about? I pointed out Scott's ugly lies. I know for a fact there's no new business venture planned. What do you mean? You got funding from Johnny recently, right? Where's that money now? Surely it wasn't spent on luxury brands and an engagement ring for a new wife. I glared at Scott. What? That's not something I would do. Scott laughed derisively, though his voice trembled. I sighed briefly. You embezzled the company's money, I said. Scott swallowed hard under my steady gaze. I had suspicions. You've been saying you're starting new ventures and getting funding from Johnny, but no business ever materializes. Just one new venture after another. It was odd not to doubt, so I spoke with Johnny to gather solid evidence. You teamed up against me. The money John transferred that day was a decoy. You transferred the business funds directly into your own bank account this time. Usually you're more careful, using various accounts to avoid detection. Were you that desperate for money, trying to prove to Michelle you're wealthy? Scott fumbled for words, confirming my suspicions. I said the last word, you're done. Get arrested and live as a criminal for the rest of your life. Shut up, it's a family matter. It'll probably just end with probation. Besides, John will bail me out. Even if I'm charged, I'll be out in no time, Scott reassured himself. How do you know all this? You were supposed to be fired. You have nothing to do with this. Johnny told me. John did? Yeah, it's me. Johnny hired me. Scott opened his mouth in surprise. I explained calmly, yes. When he heard you dumped me, he contacted me immediately. He apologized for your terrible actions and asked if he could hire me back. I said yes right away. You didn't know. John is keeping it from me. That bastard. I'm grateful to Johnny. He put me in charge of schedule management, and I'm earning more than before. I showed a broad smile, and Scott gritted his teeth. That John. I'll confront him right now, Scott said as he was about to leave. That's when it happened. Michelle grabbed Scott's arm and pulled him towards her with strength, their faces almost touching. Her expression was devilish. Hey, you lied to me, flaunting your wealth. In reality, you're just an old criminal. Don't mess with me. I'm sorry, Michelle, Scott said, terrified, taking Michelle's hand and looking into her eyes. He slowly said, but it's okay. I'll probably get probation and I can return home. I might be out of the company, but we can still be happy without money if we're together. Don't joke with me. Michelle shook off Scott's hand and glared at him as if he were trash. There's no way a beautiful young woman like me would live with an old, penniless man like you. I lied about being pregnant to get us to marry. What a waste of time. The worst. Michelle shoved Scott aside and left the room. Michelle, wait for me, Scott called out, but Michelle shut the door behind her. He stood at the entrance like a ghost. I spoke to Scott. Please leave. This is my house. Kelly, can't we start over? Me as the president and you as the secretary like before? Scott tried to charm me with a smile, but I flatly rejected him. It's impossible. I hate you. I never want to see your face again. Scott's eyes widened, and he started to tremble. Enough of that, I said, opening the door and pushing him out. I locked the door and began watching TV. Scott quietly left, realizing it was all over. Later, Scott was arrested. He thought Johnny would bail him out, but that was wrong. He was taken to a cold jail cell alone. Scott was arrested for embezzling funds entrusted to him by Johnny. Besides, he had told suppliers and related companies he was starting new ventures, asking for loans, and then diverting those funds to his personal account for private use. Scott received a sentence without probation and won't be out for several years. As for Michelle, she was suspected of conspiring with Scott and was investigated. Though no evidence of conspiracy was found, the police discovered she had been skimming money from various businessmen, approaching wealthy-looking men in bars, becoming their girlfriend, and then claiming she needed money for a pregnancy or a parent's surgery. Essentially, Scott was also a victim of Michelle's scams. Michelle was arrested for fraud. Both of them ended up in the care of the police. Half a year has passed since Scott's arrest. I am still working with Johnny, trying to recover the company's image. It's not easy, and Johnny is always worried. I want to support him, feeling grateful to him. One evening, I returned to the company with Johnny. He sank deeply into his chair and exhaled. It's been a tiring day. We had a series of business dinners. Johnny looked into my eyes and smiled. Ah, but thanks to you, Kelly, for picking a good restaurant. We had an enjoyable meal. Many of the clients are around my age, so they appreciated the healthy yet luxurious dining experience. Plus, none of them knew about today's place. It was like a surprise. Thanks to that, the conversation flowed well. Thank you. Johnny wore a gentle smile. Unlike Scott, Johnny is always calm and composed. When he speaks with someone, he always uses polite language, and his sincere character is evident. I find Johnny's personal charm appealing. It's too kind of you to say, I replied. I thanked him. Johnny sighed contentedly. To think someone as capable as you was Scott's spouse is truly surprising. I chuckled lightly. Former spouse, I have no relation with him anymore. Right, he said. By the way, Kelly, how long do you plan to work? Don't you think about retiring and living quietly at home? I answered with a smile. I love my work. As long as I'm physically able, I want to keep working. Johnny nodded happily. I want you to help me rebuild this company. It's going to be a long partnership, but I'm counting on you from now on. I nodded firmly. Yes, Johnny. Johnny laughed, amused. Seeing his laughter made me feel warm inside. My second life is surely going to be enjoyable. Looking at Johnny's smile, I thought just that. I've been married for 5 years to my kind husband. We are very close but don't have children yet. We were looking forward to the day we would, until the accident happened. Please listen to this unbelievable story. My husband is kind to everyone, not just me. My parents adore him too. I have a sister who is very focused on her career. My husband got along well with her, even though she was always busy with work. Suddenly, my husband's work became very busy. He started coming home late and working on his days off. He was put in charge of a team and was always on his phone, staying in touch with his team members. Looking back, people might have found that suspicious, but I didn't. I just worried about his health. Then my sister, who lived alone in her own apartment, decided to move because of a new job. She wanted to buy furniture for her new place, so I planned to take her shopping in my car on a Saturday. However, on the day of the trip, my boss called, and I had to go to the office. This was the only day off my sister had, and I didn't want to cancel. I realized my husband had the day off, which was rare lately. I asked him if he could take my sister shopping instead. He saw the trouble I was in and agreed, even though it felt a bit awkward. He asked if he could borrow my car since his was being repaired. I was grateful for his help and went to the office to deal with my work problem. It was the first time my husband and sister went out alone together. I wondered if they were doing well and if they had found the right furniture. After I finished dealing with the problem at work, it was dark. I pulled out my phone to call my husband and sister for dinner. That's when I got a call from an unknown number. "Hello. Am I speaking to Eric's family member?" a stranger asked. "Yes, I'm his wife. This is the police. Your husband has been in an accident." The man who said he was a police officer told me that the car my husband was driving had been in an accident. Both he and his female passenger were unconscious. I don't remember what I did after hearing the news, but I rushed to the hospital. I told the emergency receptionist my name and was taken to the ICU. Through the glass window, I saw my husband connected to tubes and covered in bandages. I was very worried about what would happen to him. My mother, who lived far away, arrived later, and we spent an anxious night together. The police told us more details about the accident. They said Eric had been driving on a clear road when a car ran a red light and hit him. The other driver was also seriously injured and being treated at the same hospital. The driver said Eric's car had been acting strangely before the crash, so the police were checking if Eric had fallen asleep at the wheel. A few days later, my husband and sister woke up and the doctors ran some tests. My mother and I were called in to hear the results. We were told that while they would not die, they would likely have some disabilities. Still, my mother and I were happy they were alive and hoped they would recover somewhat through rehabilitation. We didn't tell them about the possibility of disabilities. We only told them positive things and took care of them. My mother looked after my sister, and I took care of my husband. At first, my husband was in shock from the accident and not feeling well. He was also worried about the trouble he caused us. But over time, my kind husband started to change. He was frustrated because his leg wouldn't move easily. The hospital treatment and having to quit his job made things worse, and he couldn't control his anger. Still, I went to the hospital every day because I understood how he felt and wanted to support him. One day, a police detective came to the hospital. He told me he had discovered something about the accident. It seemed that the brake oil in my car had leaked, so an accident might have happened sooner or later. He said this might explain why the car was acting strangely before the crash. The woman who crashed into my car was also not doing well. Her mother came to apologize. It was the first time I had met her. Since then, my husband's anger towards me increased. He was mad that I could move while he couldn't. He was also annoyed that I couldn't stay long at the hospital because of my work schedule. He started ordering me around and venting his anger on me when I didn't get what he wanted. He threw things at me, complained about his hospital room, and even complained when I went out to buy my own lunch. His demands kept getting worse. I felt sorry for him, but I had to work to make ends meet. There were many things I had to do, like contacting the police and talking to the hospital. I didn't even have time to breathe. My husband's attitude was becoming unbearable. I could see that I was being driven into a corner. My sister was in a similar state of mind, and my mother became more and more exhausted. I heard that my sister's demands on my mother, who had no job, were even worse when I couldn't go to the hospital. Both my husband and my sister seemed to have heard that they would remain paralyzed even with rehabilitation. Then there was the issue of my car's brake oil leaking. My sister said, "Hey, I heard your car was leaking oil. You were responsible for your car's maintenance. I can't work, and I can't get my body back to normal because of it. Mom looks irritated, and your husband is in the same condition. You are responsible for taking care of me and your husband for the rest of your life." My sister blamed me so harshly that I felt overwhelmed. I tried to explain that I had no idea about the leak and that I had been taking care of the car as best as I could, but she wouldn't listen. She kept saying that it was my fault and that I should have been more careful. My mother's health was also deteriorating because of the constant stress and pressure from both my sister and my husband. She looked tired and worn out, but she continued to help as much as she could. I felt guilty for putting her through all this, but I didn't know what else to do. As days went by, my husband's attitude grew worse. He became more demanding and less understanding. He blamed me for everything that went wrong, and his anger was relentless. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, constantly trying to avoid triggering his rage. Despite all this, I tried to stay positive. I kept telling myself that things would get better and that my husband and sister would eventually recover. I hoped that with time, their anger would subside and they would understand that I was doing my best. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, I sat down with my mother to talk about the situation. She listened patiently as I poured out my worries and fears. She reminded me that I wasn't alone and that we would get through this together. We decided to seek help from a counselor to find ways to cope with the stress and the emotional strain. It was a difficult decision, but we knew it was necessary for our well-being. As we started the counseling sessions, I noticed a slight change in my husband's behavior. He seemed to be more willing to talk about his feelings and frustrations. It wasn't a complete turnaround, but it was a start. My sister, on the other hand, remained hostile. She continued to blame me for her condition and refused to participate in any counseling sessions. It was heartbreaking to see her so consumed by anger, but I knew I had to focus on what I could control. In the midst of all this, I continued to work and manage our household. It was exhausting, but I took it one day at a time. I leaned on my mother for support, and we found strength in each other. Slowly, my husband's physical condition started to improve. The rehabilitation sessions were helping, and he was regaining some mobility. His mood also improved slightly, and there were moments when I saw glimpses of the kind man I married. My sister, however, remained distant and bitter. I continued to reach out to her, hoping that one day she would let go of her anger and allow us to help her heal. It was a long and difficult journey, but I held on to hope. Through it all, I learned the importance of resilience and the power of love and support. Despite the challenges, I remained committed to my family, determined to see us through this tough time. And so, we continued our journey, facing each day with courage and hope, believing that brighter days were ahead. My sister blamed me so harshly that I was shocked and called my mother. She told me my sister had been like this for a long time and that she was too tired to go to the hospital. Still worried about my husband, I went to the hospital. When I didn't see him in his room, I found him with my sister in the common room. Visiting hours were almost over, and they were sitting alone together in the empty room. "Hey," my husband said, glaring at me, "I've heard that if you had just taken the car in for inspection, none of this would have happened." "Yeah, but," I started to say, "you are the reason why your sister and I are in this mess. The insurance will pay for it, and you're going to have to take care of us for the rest of your life. Remember that." Hearing those words, something snapped inside me. "Since when are you so close to my sister?" I asked. "What do you mean?" my husband replied. "You don't come here often, and your mom texted your sister to say she could come for a while. Since we both can't leave this place or walk, What's wrong with talking to your husband? It felt like my husband and sister were ganging up on me. I know, right, I said sarcastically. You guys hadn't seen each other for a long time before the accident, right? My husband ignored my question. I'm talking about you taking care of us. You know that, he said. My sister didn't look at me but nodded when my husband said I would take care of them both for the rest of their lives. I didn't expect an answer, but I kept asking anyway, hoping they might understand how I felt. I wonder if the person whose car hit you is getting better now, I said. How should I know? My husband snapped. She ran into us when the traffic light was red. It's just unbelievable. That's right, my sister added. You can't imagine how scary it was. We really need to make sure we get some compensation from her. And I was so close to getting a promotion, too. If I didn't cut in, they would just keep on complaining. I decided it was time to expose the truth. There's something I need to let you know. What? First of all, I had my car inspected before the accident. Did you? Then the dealer should be sued. There's no way they didn't know the brake oil was leaking. I know, right? So, right after the accident, the police called me. They wanted to know the cause of the accident, so they asked if they could look at my drive recorder. But that old drive recorder doesn't record sound, and it also doesn't start recording until after the accident, so you can't get anything out of it. I see, it's just like I thought. You didn't know I had gotten a new drive recorder. My sister looked up in surprise. What? I also installed another camera inside the car. Her face grew paler and paler. Drive recorders nowadays can start recording with even a slight shake of the car. The police contacted me and said they had seen the data. My husband looked confused, and my sister looked so pale she almost collapsed. You were up to something, correct? I confronted her. What do you mean? She asked, panicking. You did something to the car, I said, turning to my husband. You talk to her like she's your girlfriend. My husband stopped talking, apparently in panic. I told you earlier that a slight vibration would start the recording, and so many intimate scenes between the two of you were recorded. I was so embarrassed when the police asked if it was my sister who was in the car with my husband. The blood drained from my husband's face. You guys had been having an affair all this time. You had completely fooled me. Not knowing what to do, my husband started blaming my sister. Linda isn't the only one at fault here. At that moment, the mother of the woman who had crashed into my car came to the hospital room. I had asked her to come over. Don't you have anything to say to her? I asked. My sister was taken aback by the sudden appearance of the small, frail woman. Whoa, who's this? She asked. She's the mother of the woman who crashed into you. She should be the one paying for all this. Surprised by the woman's tears, my husband stopped talking. She's the mother of the woman who crashed into you, I repeated. She's also the mother of the woman who was your victim. Her name is Kelly. I'm sure you know who she is. Hearing the woman's name, my husband turned completely pale. My sister started to panic. What is this? Do you know the woman who was driving the car? She asked. That means they knew it was your car, and she crashed into it. Who is she? As my husband seemed at a loss for words, I decided to tell my sister what was going on. She was having an affair with Eric. He had told her that he would get a divorce soon, but he didn't. So when Kelly lied to him that she was pregnant with his baby, Eric told her to get an abortion. After that, she couldn't get in touch with Eric and wanted to hurt me to take revenge. Wait, so that means, my sister started. Right, you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, I replied. I can't believe I let something like this ruin my life, my sister groaned. The reality is that there is nothing you can do about it, no matter how much you cry or scream, I said. This didn't happen to completely innocent people. Now you understand what happened. You two were having an affair behind my back, and Linda was trying to get me injured or killed by messing with the brake oil in my car. But then she got in the car herself and ended up in the accident. I am the victim here. I was going to try not to divorce you if you apologized and confessed everything during your hospital stay, but you never showed any remorse. On the contrary, you treated me terribly. Do you remember how we wrote our divorce papers right after we got married? I never thought I'd use them, but I submitted the papers today. So you and I are no longer married. Bye. Having said all that, I left the dark and quiet hospital. I felt free, having finally released the resentment I had bottled up inside. But my mother was greatly shocked when she found out the truth. Not only was she hurt by my sister's infidelity, but she was also weighed down by the fact that she would have to take care of her physically disabled daughter all by herself. As I walked out of the hospital, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and sadness. The weight of the betrayal from both my husband and sister was heavy, but the decision to finally free myself from the toxic situation brought a sense of liberation. The air outside felt different, lighter, as if a burden had been lifted off my shoulders. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, taking deep breaths. The city lights flickered around me, and the hum of traffic was a comforting reminder that life goes on. I thought about everything that had happened, from the accident to the shocking revelations. It felt like a whirlwind, and now I had to figure out what my next steps would be. When I got home, I found my mother sitting in the living room, looking lost and tired. She had been through so much, and I could see the toll it had taken on her. We sat together in silence for a while, both of us processing the events of the day. "I'm so sorry, Mom," I finally said. "I didn't want any of this to happen. I didn't know things would turn out this way." She looked at me with a sad smile. "It's not your fault, dear. You did what you had to do. I'm just worried about your sister. I don't know how we will manage." "We'll figure it out," I reassured her. "We'll take it one day at a time. Maybe we can find some help for her, someone who can assist with her care. You're not alone in this. We'll get through it together." The days that followed were challenging. My sister's condition required constant attention, and my mother and I had to adjust to a new routine. We hired a nurse to help with my sister's daily needs, which provided some relief, but the emotional strain was still present. My husband, now my ex-husband, tried to contact me several times, but I ignored his calls. I had nothing left to say to him. The divorce was finalized quickly, and I made sure to cut all ties. I needed to move on and start healing from the trauma. Work became a sanctuary for me. It was a place where I could focus on something other than the chaos in my personal life. My colleagues were supportive, and throwing myself into my tasks helped keep my mind occupied. Over time, the wounds began to heal. My sister slowly came to terms with her new reality, and though our relationship was strained, we found a way to coexist peacefully. My mother, though still weary, seemed to regain some of her strength. We found a new normal, one that wasn't perfect but was manageable. Reflecting on everything, I realized how strong I had become. The betrayal had tested me in ways I never imagined, but it also showed me my resilience. I had faced the darkest parts of my life and come out on the other side, stronger and more determined than ever. Life moved forward, and so did I. The scars remained, but they were a testament to my journey and the battles I had fought. With each passing day, I embraced the future with hope, ready to build a new life for myself and my family. I've cut off all ties with Eric and Linda, but I couldn't leave my mother to handle everything alone. So I talked to the person responsible for the accident, accepted the necessary apologies, and asked her to compensate my sister, who was mistakenly involved in the accident, so my mother wouldn't be troubled. 3 years have passed since then. My husband and I are divorced, and I am living on my own. Back then, Eric and I were seen as a close couple, so the divorce surprised my coworkers. After that, more and more men approached me for advice. I thought it was because I was going through that phase when divorced women suddenly seem appealing to men. The image of my ex-husband lingered in my mind, and I couldn't bring myself to date anymore. I studied hard for a certification exam to build my career. I even joined an online business school that I could attend after work. When I was married, I never imagined wanting to do something like that. I never invited my sister, who had been a career woman, and I didn't think I would ever aspire to be one. But there I was, naturally aiming for that. Life is strange, I thought. Since then, my ex-husband has returned to his parents' house, but he seems to be treated as a burden by his family. His relatives blamed him for his bad behavior and the way he treated me. I hear that he is not doing well mentally and has been acting violently, causing lots of trouble for those around him. My sister also returned to our parents' house, but she too became mentally ill and continued to behave selfishly. My mother, exhausted, used my sister's savings and the accident compensation to put her in a care home. She asked me about it beforehand, but I had no reason to oppose it, so I told her she could do whatever she wanted. If I hadn't noticed anything back then, things might have been very different. I would have been like a slave for both of them for the rest of my life. I never thought about that before, but now I realize how different my life could have been. After everything that happened, I decided to focus on myself and my future. I studied hard and passed the certification exam I had been aiming for. This success led to a transfer to a new department where I could really use my skills and grow in my career. It felt good to achieve something for myself, to prove that I could rebuild my life. During this time, I also became close with the teacher who ran the online business school. We spent a lot of time together, and our friendship grew into something more. Unlike my ex-husband, he wasn't just kind to everyone, he was especially kind to me. He showed me what it felt like to be truly cared for and appreciated. We are soon to be married, and I feel incredibly fortunate to have found someone who supports and loves me. When I get home late from work, he makes sure to come back early to prepare dinner for us. He always thinks about my needs and makes an effort to create a happy and loving home. I have learned to cherish these small moments of happiness. They remind me of how far I've come and how much I have overcome. Every day, I feel grateful for the new life I have built and the love I have found. One evening, as I hurried home from work, I looked up at the stars and thought about everything I had been through. I made a wish upon a star, hoping for continued happiness and strength. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had led me to a place where I felt truly content. When I walked through the door, my partner was there, waiting for me with a warm smile and a delicious dinner ready on the table. His kindness and understanding were constant reminders of how much my life had changed for the better. We talked about our day, shared laughs, and made plans for our future together. My past, with all its pain and betrayal, seemed like a distant memory. I had learned to let go of the anger and resentment, and instead focus on the positive aspects of my new life. I found joy in the simple things, like cooking together, taking evening walks, and planning weekend getaways. My relationship with my mother also improved. She saw how happy I was and supported my new relationship. We talked often, and she visited us regularly. My sister was still in the care home, and while it was a difficult situation, my mother and I managed to find a balance. We made sure she was taken care of, but we also made time for ourselves and our own well-being. As my wedding day approached, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. I was about to start a new chapter in my life with someone who truly loved and respected me. On the day of the wedding, surrounded by friends and family, I felt an overwhelming sense of happiness and peace. I knew that I had made it through the darkest times and had come out stronger and more resilient. Looking into my partner's eyes as we exchanged vows, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had shown me what true love and kindness were, and I was ready to spend the rest of my life with him. Our future together looked bright, and I was excited to see where it would take us. After the wedding, we settled into our new life together. We continued to support each other in our careers and personal growth. We traveled, explored new hobbies, and made countless memories. Every day felt like a new adventure, filled with love and laughter. Reflecting on my journey, I realized that all the hardships had led me to this point. They had taught me valuable lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the importance of surrounding myself with people who genuinely cared about me. I had transformed my life and found happiness in ways I never imagined possible. As I looked forward to the future, I knew that I could handle whatever came my way. I had built a strong foundation of love, trust, and mutual respect with my partner. Together, we were ready to face any challenges and celebrate every joy that life had to offer. And so my story continued, not as a victim of circumstance, but as a person who had found strength and happiness in the face of adversity. I embraced each day with a grateful heart, knowing that I had created a life filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities. Finally, I'm free from that burden. Starting today, my parents are moving in with me at my house. When my parents passed away, my husband Scott demolished our family home and stood in front of its site. He blurted out, "Hurry up and bring the inheritance to our place." I stood there in shock and asked, "What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind?" At his words, I couldn't help but laugh. I realized what this was all about. "Why are you laughing? Don't you understand?" Scott and my in-laws looked at me, puzzled. That's when I told them the truth. My name is Amy Jackson. I was born the eldest daughter of ordinary office worker parents. I have one brother, and we were a very normal family. I married Scott when I was 30, and we had 2 kids. Balancing work and parenting, I suddenly found myself at 52. My son Eric and daughter Judy had grown up to be fine adults, each living on their own and starting their careers. Now was the time to relax with my husband. It was an ordinary life, but I was happy. I thought I would continue to age like this, but my simple life changed one winter day. My father was in a car accident and suddenly passed away. He was only 68 at the time. Our whole family was overwhelmed with grief, especially my mother, who was so depressed she couldn't even eat. "Mom, I know it's hard, but you have to eat," I told her again and again. "I know, but I just don't have the appetite. It feels like there's something stuck in my chest," she replied. My brother and I thought she was just emotionally distressed and watched her for a while. However, she rapidly lost weight in just 3 weeks. Worried, I took her to the hospital. The diagnosis from the doctor was shocking: cancer. The cancer was advanced, and surgery wasn't an option. She had about a year left to live. I hadn't had the chance to really take care of my parents yet. When I thought I had lost my father, now my mother was facing this illness. I was even more devastated than when my father passed, but I couldn't grieve forever. My brother lived far away and couldn't help, so it was up to me to take care of my mother. I told Scott that I wanted to live with my mother. I couldn't leave her alone, both emotionally and physically, during her illness. But Scott's reaction surprised me. "We just finished dealing with your dad's funeral, and now I have to be dragged into more of your family's issues," he said with a sigh, clearly annoyed. "You don't have to say it like that. Can't you just drive her to the hospital and back?" "Do we really have to live with her?" I asked. "I think she might feel lonely. If it's not okay, maybe I can just live at my family home for a while," I suggested. Scott became indignant. "And who's going to take care of my meals while you're gone?" "I'll come and cook, of course." "What about cleaning? Who's going to do the laundry?" he demanded. I fell silent. I intended to do what I could, but I couldn't do everything as before. Being confronted with this reality hurt. If someone said I was being selfish for wanting to care for my mother, I wouldn't be able to argue back. I'm sure my mother, being considerate, would say everything is fine as it is, but I really wanted to do something for my parents. "Fine, but I'm not helping with anything, you hear?" Scott grudgingly said to my silence. His attitude was arrogant, but he had ultimately agreed. "I'm sorry and thank you," I said. Although I thought he was being awful, he had agreed to my wish. I suppressed my desire to argue back and thanked him. Despite the trouble, Scott and I started living with my mother at my family home. We had originally been living in a house provided by Scott's employer. Scott was an only child, and since his father really wanted us to live together, we didn't plan on buying our own home. We were going to eventually move in with Scott's parents. Living in the company housing was more convenient for work, and the rent was only about $1,000 a month, so it wasn't a big burden. But now that we've moved to my family home, we don't have to pay that anymore, and we have more space. I think living together wasn't all bad for Scott. True to his word, Scott didn't help with anything, but I'm glad I could live with my mother. She seemed energetic, but she often felt weak and spent a lot of time lying down during the day. I prepared her meals, fed her, and managed her medication. It would have been impossible for her to do all that alone. I'm sorry, Amy. Thank you. It's a big help that you're here with me. I should thank Scott too, my mother said, expressing her gratitude many times. She was unaware of the harsh words Scott had said about living together, so she was grateful to him too. One evening, after my mother had gone to bed and Scott returned home, I brought up the subject of my mother's treatment while serving dinner. Scott glared at me and said, "I don't know what you want me to say. I told you I'm not helping with anything," refusing even to listen. I needed someone to vent to, someone to consult. All I wanted was for Scott to listen. Even after 2 months, 3 months, Scott's attitude didn't change. He constantly complained about living together, acting as if he was doing a great favor, and his behavior became more obnoxious day by day. But I couldn't say anything against it. Between worrying about my mother and being considerate of Scott, I was becoming more stressed. Around the time of the 2-year prognosis, my mother's condition worsened rapidly and she was hospitalized. 5 days later, she passed away. Although I had prepared myself mentally, I was devastated. My brother's family and my children came right away and helped a lot, but in times like this, you really want your spouse by your side. However, Scott was laughing and chatting with his parents in a corner, not helping with the funeral preparations at all. My brother had taken the lead role in the preparations, and somehow we got everything ready for the funeral. But Scott, who should have been sitting in the family section, was at the very back of the relative section. "Scott, I want you to sit in the family section," I said. He replied, "No, I'm fine here. I'm not a blood relative after all." "But you're my husband," I said. Then his mother chimed in, "He's your husband, but he's not your mother's son. Scott is our son, so he's an outsider, you know. Amy should sit in the family section." Hearing this from my in-laws was painful. I was left speechless. Where I come from, it's common for sons-in-law to sit in the family section at funerals, though this might vary by area. With Scott not in the family section, distant relatives started whispering, wondering if we had divorced. It's one thing for people to gossip, but all this could have been avoided if Scott had just sat there. Feeling a bit upset that Scott wasn't by my side, we still managed to see my mother off peacefully. After the funeral, my brother's family, my children, Scott, and his parents returned to my family home. "Thank you for coming, especially at such a busy time," I said to my in-laws, offering them some tea. They laughed and replied, "Really, it's something. First your father, now your mother. These funeral expenses are a burden for us too, but at least that's the end of it." I was stunned by their words. What did they mean by that? I couldn't believe they would say such a thing. I forced a smile and excused myself. Then I overheard Scott talking with his parents. "It must have been tough for you, Scott, living with outsiders." "Yeah, dealing with Amy's whims was a pain. A husband shouldn't just follow his wife's demands. If you don't like something, you have every right to refuse," Scott said. I clenched my fists. Their voices laughing and chatting were unbearable, but this wasn't new. Scott's parents had always been insensitive and rude. When Scott and I got married, his mother said, "Couldn't you find someone more attractive? I can't expect much for grandchildren." His father joked, "They say beauty gets boring after 3 days. With Amy, you won't get bored," and Scott just laughed. Reflecting back, neither Scott nor his parents had said a single comforting word to me, either at my father's funeral or after my mother's passing. Instead, they ridiculed me. I had felt sorry for imposing on Scott, but now I questioned his behavior as a person. I had been too concerned about Scott, while just wanting to do right by my mother. I realized I shouldn't have felt so guilty towards Scott, especially since he wasn't supportive. While I simmered in anger, Scott and his parents continued to laugh and chat in another room. If my brother's family and my kids had heard them, they would have been upset, but fortunately, they were in the kitchen. I was relieved to be the only one who heard Scott and his parents' conversation. Then my mother-in-law spoke up. "Amy," she called. "Yes," I replied, startled. "Can I have this?" she asked, holding my mother's purse. Confused, I stammered, "Oh well. Your mother won't be needing it anymore, right?" Scott suggested I take it home. "Maybe I'll just keep it," she said, holding up the purse and inspecting it. I couldn't believe her audacity, especially right after the funeral. I took the purse from her and said firmly, "No, you can't." Her expression changed, not because of the purse, but because I, her daughter-in-law, stood up to her. Yet, I stood my ground. "We're not ready to sort through my mother's belongings yet. We'll distribute her keepsakes among the family later." My mother-in-law turned red with anger. "What do you mean? Are you saying I'm an outsider?" "You said earlier at the funeral that even Scott was an outsider to my mother. How come Scott is an outsider but your family isn't?" I retorted. Hearing this, Scott and his father also turned red. "What are you saying? Apologize to Mom. How disrespectful of a daughter-in-law to talk like that." Their commotion drew everyone from the other room. I didn't expect to be called an outsider after all the effort we put into attending the funeral. "Let's go home, Dad," my mother-in-law shouted at me in front of everyone and stormed out of our house. For some reason, even Scott was angry and left with his parents. "What happened? Did you really call your mother-in-law an outsider?" everyone asked me. Having heard only her side, taken out of context, it might have seemed like I was the one being harsh. But I explained the situation to everyone, and not a single person blamed me. Grandpa and Grandma should be more considerate of other people's feelings. That's just how Dad, Grandma, and Grandpa have always been. My children sided with me. But I still couldn't forgive those three. Scott hadn't come home for a while since that day, and I hadn't contacted him either. I didn't think I should be the one to apologize, and I wasn't sure if I could forgive him even if he did. But I knew things couldn't stay this way forever. Then one day, Scott came back. "Welcome home," I greeted him, suppressing the anger that flared up at the sight of him. "It's been tough, huh?" His gruff words were an attempt at showing concern, and I was taken aback. "Take the kids and go on a trip. It'll be a good change of scenery for you," he said, handing me travel vouchers. I was speechless. Instead, tears started to stream down my face. It might have been the kids' idea, but I was touched that Scott went along with it. I immediately contacted the kids to plan the trip. "Really, Dad suggested this. It's surprising, isn't it?" The kids were astonished by my proposal. It seemed like it really was a gift from Scott. "I wonder if Dad feels bad about what happened," I said, laughing. I gratefully accepted the travel vouchers from Scott. "I'll be off then." "Yeah, take your time. Stay with the kids at their places too. Why not?" "Really, I can't be away that long." "Don't worry about me. I'll relax at my parents'. Just enjoy yourself." With that, Scott sent me off. Judy was happy to have me visit, so before the spa trip, I stopped by her place and then Gary's. I hadn't been able to visit them while caring for my mother, so I helped out by cooking and freezing meals for them. "Mom, you should relax, but thanks. This really helps," they both said, delighted to have my cooking at home. This opportunity was all thanks to Scott's suggestion. Then came the eagerly awaited spa trip. I spent a relaxing time at the hot springs with my children. The weariness from caregiving and the sorrow of losing my parents seemed to have healed quite a bit. I was away for almost a week, but both my kids returned to their homes with bright smiles. That was fun. We should thank Dad for once. True, just this once. But I wonder if he's up to something, Judy joked. Don't say that. Dad thought about us in his own way, I laughed. When I returned home, planning to share the memories with Scott and start our life anew as a couple, I was speechless. What? The house is? I looked around in disbelief. Despite recognizing the location, the family home that should have been there was gone. Then, out of nowhere, Scott appeared, followed by his parents. They were grinning at me, standing there dumbfounded. Scott, what's going on? I asked. With the same sickening smile, Scott said, Finally, I'm rid of that baggage. Starting today, my parents are moving in with me at my house. What are you talking about? I replied, trying to stay calm. Have you lost your mind? Your family home has been demolished. Bring the inheritance to our place quickly. Whatever you inherited, it's Scott's now. I realized then that the disappearance of the house was Scott's doing, and it was all for the inheritance. Such betrayal after thinking about the future on my way home. I was filled with indescribable sadness and anger, but demolishing the house won't go Scott's way. I won't let it. I burst into laughter at the sight of their smirking faces. My laughter baffled Scott and his father. Why are you laughing? What a weird woman. Has she gone crazy? My mother-in-law said, looking at me as if I were eerie. Facing the three of them, I spoke up. Don't you guys know what you're talking about? I haven't inherited a single penny, so there's no inheritance. After saying that, I burst into laughter again. They had mistakenly thought they'd become rich from the inheritance. Their wild imaginations and actions had me in uncontrollable laughter. What do you mean? Explain yourself, Scott demanded. But I kept my mouth shut. I felt no need to enlighten them. Before that, I'm not going to live with strangers. If you want to live together, go ahead alone. Ignoring Scott's question and rejecting his suggestion made my mother-in-law furious. You helped with your parents' housework, but you can't do ours? You're aware of the circumstances, right? I agreed to live together, didn't I? She yelled. I told you I didn't want to live together. Have you forgotten that? You chose to live together to avoid housework. I refuted them one after another. Also, demolishing the family home like that, there are things you just shouldn't do. I yelled at them and then left. Behind me, Scott's voice called out, Where are you going? But I didn't look back. Right now, I needed to find a place to sleep for the night, and I really didn't want to see Scott's face. I immediately consulted a lawyer. Demolishing a house couldn't be that easy. The house was still in my mother's name. As I wondered which company had done it, an unbelievable truth came to light. Scott and his father had demolished it themselves. His father, who worked in demolition, enlisted the help of acquaintances and even rented heavy machinery. The planning was meticulous. Moreover, they even gave me travel vouchers to get rid of me. Tears welled up in my eyes at the realization of being deceived. The frustration was unbearable. Is there any way to punish all three of them? I tearfully explained my situation. The lawyer smiled at me kindly. Scott unlawfully demolished the house in your mother's name. He could be charged with property destruction and held liable for damages. Let's start by demanding a formal apology from Scott and his parents. I nodded in agreement, and the lawyer quickly took the necessary actions. A few days later, Scott called me, furious about the legal notice he received. What's with this certified letter? He yelled. Oh, you got it. You destroyed my precious house, so of course you have to compensate, I replied. Compensate? We said we were moving to my parents' place. I demolished a house that nobody was going to live in. You should be thanking me, not asking for compensation. Now bring the inheritance and come back home, he said arrogantly. Thank you for demolishing my house? Don't make me laugh. And what inheritance? It's not even settled yet, I shouted back. Scott was silent, seemingly taken aback by my anger, which I rarely displayed. The reason I laughed when the house was demolished was exactly this. I had a whole year with my mother. It was obvious that we would discuss matters of inheritance. So I told my brother I didn't want anything and to give it all to him. As a result, he inherited all the cash and stocks. He insisted that I should have the house since he lived far away and couldn't manage it. If I wasn't going to live there, it could be rented out. That was the plan. Either you and your father restore the house to its original state or pay the amount specified in the letter. I was considering settling this amicably. Well, fine. If you can't pay, I'll file a police report and sue you, I declared. I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd get so angry, Scott said, starting to make excuses. Of course, I'm angry. What do you expect? I snapped. Scott seemed to think that if my family home was gone, he wouldn't have to live with his parents. His father had always wanted to live together and had a fondness for Eric. Scott had refused to live together before, citing difficult commutes, but his parents thought I was the one against it. So he convinced them by demolishing my house and making it seem like I'd move in with them with the inheritance. But I couldn't forgive him after hearing such a thing. Please give me a break. I didn't mean any harm. Dad's sorry too. If he's truly sorry, then agree to the settlement, I said and hung up the phone. Scott kept calling and sending messages, apologizing. If you're sorry, just transfer the money, I pushed him away. I knew my childhood home couldn't be restored, but this was the only way I could deal with my unbearable feelings. I stayed at Judy's place. My brother's family and my children knew about the situation, although my brother must have been angry about our house being demolished without his consent. He said, I won't interfere, but I'll help in any way I can. Do what you think is best, Amy. Everyone condemned Scott's actions and supported me. A month passed without any compensation or alimony payment from Scott. During that time, there was no contact from him. I couldn't stay with Judy forever. I wanted to get the money as soon as possible to at least establish a living foundation. Contrary to my wishes, something unbelievable happened. It was revealed by Judy. This apron looks a lot like Grandma's, she said, showing me her smartphone screen. I was surprised when I saw it. It was a listing on a flea market app. The apron Judy mentioned, similar to my mother's, was a unique one I had made for her. What? This is Grandma's apron. I made it, so I'm sure, I said. Judy quickly checked other listings. The seller seemed to have recently joined the app with no transactions or reviews yet. There were nearly 50 items listed, and to my horror, all of them belonged to my mother. I immediately realized it was Scott. He was the only one who could have taken my mother's belongings after demolishing the house. I called Scott right away. What's this about the app? I asked. App? Scott responded, sounding annoyed. Don't play dumb. You're selling Mom's things without permission, aren't you? Cancel those listings right now, I demanded. Scott, sounding panicked, replied, What? No, it wasn't me. Who else would do such a thing? I'm coming over right now to get everything back, I said and hung up. Then I immediately headed to Scott's parents' house with Judy. Where are Mom's things? I demanded as soon as we arrived, confronting Scott at the door. I don't know anything about it, he stuttered. Tell the truth, Dad. Judy joined me in pressuring Scott. He seemed flustered. Scott's parents noticed our presence and came out. Oh, Judy, you're here, Scott's mom greeted, smiling at the sight of her granddaughter. Angry, Judy said, Grandma, tell Dad to tell the truth. The truth? Grandma's belongings that passed away recently? Dad seems to be selling them, Judy said. At Judy's words, Scott's mom burst into laughter. Scott, with a troubled look, kept repeating, It really wasn't me. Then his mother loudly exclaimed, Scott is selling them. That's impossible. I am the one selling them. I felt my blood run cold. Scott probably knew about it. With a look that almost said, This is bad, he turned to his mother. Despite Judy's shock, his mother cheerfully continued. What? It's a lot of work, you know. I have to pack everything carefully and make sure the photos look good. She seemed oblivious to the fact that she was selling stolen goods, chatting happily about the app. I struggled to restrain myself from lunging at her. Cancel the listings. Those aren't yours to sell. Judy, red with anger and tears in her eyes, pleaded with her grandmother. However, Scott's mother seemed displeased. What's the big deal? I finally found a hobby I enjoy. I use the things I can and sell the rest for a little pocket money. It's good for preventing dementia. I'm the only grandma left, so Judy wants me to stay healthy and live long, right? She said nonchalantly. Pleading with her to stop had no effect. There was no sign of remorse. If talking won't help, then action is the only option. Judy, let's go. But, it's okay, let's go, I insisted, pulling Judy out of the house and heading straight to the police station. I wasn't planning to file a report for the demolition of the house, but theft was a different story. When I explained to the police that my mother's belongings were being stolen and sold, they acted immediately, and Scott's mother's account on the flea market app was suspended. The items wouldn't be sold anymore. I called Scott on the way back from the station. I had your mother's account stopped. You knew about it, right? You're complicit. No, I filed a police report about this. Please cooperate with the investigation. Scott became frantic. What? We're family, right? Withdraw it, please. Family? You still haven't paid any compensation for the house or alimony, and there's no sign of remorse. Faced with my shouting, Scott was taken aback. Despite everything, I still had feelings for Scott, having lived with him for so long. Sighing, I said, I'll wait for the money, but I won't forgive the theft. Return everything. And Scott, your father looked quite unwell. Has he seen a doctor? What? I'm not a monster, so just passing on that message, I said and hung up. Scott's father, whom I had just seen, was alarmingly thin and hadn't spoken much. His complexion was more than just pale, it was unnaturally dark. His ill health was obvious, but that family probably hadn't noticed. His wife was nonchalantly selling stolen items, and Scott only acted tough with me. They lacked any real concern for others. The next day, I received a call from Scott's father. Expecting it to be a thank you call, I answered. I got the complete opposite reaction. What do you mean by treating me like a sick person? Planning to dump me in a hospital to get rid of the hassle? I need to protect Scott and my wife from you. I'm not going to any hospital, he scolded. It was shocking to be reprimanded when I was just concerned. Sorry for overstepping. I was just worried. Humph, I'm not frail or short-lived like your parents. Don't make a fool of me, he snapped. I was infuriated by his words, but a few days later, he apparently felt unwell enough to visit the hospital. The diagnosis was terminal cancer. Scott called me in a panic. Dad's got terminal cancer. What am I going to do? I just snorted. I don't know. What did he say when I suggested going to the hospital? He said, I'm not frail or short-lived like your parents, so deal with it yourself. How can you be so heartless, Amy? I never thought you'd be such a person. Did you ever say a single warm word when my mother was sick? Reflect on your own actions, I said and hung up. As expected, Scott's father passed away soon after. As a human being, I didn't want to harbor negative feelings towards the deceased, but recalling everything that had been done and said, I couldn't shed a tear. After his funeral, his will was found. Despite all this talk of not being short-lived, he had made thorough preparations. The house goes to the grandson Eric. The rest of the estate is to be divided between my wife and eldest son. I was surprised to see Eric's name. Scott's father had always favored him, wanting to live with him. He must have wanted Eric to have the house even after his death. It was a nuisance for Eric. Renounce the inheritance. You don't need that house, do you? I told Eric, but he was happy to receive it. Inheriting the house was more of a burden than a benefit due to inheritance tax, but if he was pleased, I had no right to say anything. Following the will, Eric inherited the house. His grandmother was happy and paid the inheritance tax. He's our successor, after all, she said. While that's not wrong, I felt a bit sad, as if Eric had been taken from me. Then something unbelievable happened next. "Come over to our house." Scott's call prompted me to head straight to his parents' house. When I arrived, I saw Scott's mother and Scott himself standing in front of their house, stunned. Just like I once had been, the site was filled with heavy machinery and trucks labeled with demolition company names. Workers were tearing down their house right before our eyes. "What's going on? It's my house. I can do what I want with it," Eric said, appearing from somewhere, looking satisfied as he watched the demolition. "Eric, what are you doing? Stop this right now," Scott shouted. "Stopping it now won't make it livable anyway," Eric replied. "What have you done?" Scott's mother and Scott were begging Eric, but Eric just laughed. "Did you forget what Grandpa and Dad did to Mom? Grandma, you were awful to Mom too, right? Did you apologize?" Eric's smile turned into a sharp glare at Scott's mother and Scott. They fell to their knees as the heavy machinery continued to noisily dismantle their house. I finally felt relieved seeing this scene. Later, Scott finally paid the damages and compensation from the inherited assets. The stolen items that Scott's mother took from my mother were retrieved by Eric and safely returned to me. "You always have me and Judy," Eric said, and I finally shed tears of relief. Scott's mother and Scott, having lost their house and left with no money, were now living in a company house again. Scott and I had moved out of the company house, but now Scott and his mother had to return, becoming the subject of rumors. I explained the whole truth to Scott's colleague's wife, who we were on good terms with. "Scott and his mother will likely have a hard life in the company housing, but it's their own doing. After Scott's retirement, they'll be forced to save up for a new place to live." I sometimes think about asking my friend how Scott and his mother are living now, just to have something to talk about. After that, I continued to stay at Judy's house. Then Eric got engaged to be married. He was planning to build a house. The land of the former family home sold for a decent amount, and I was glad to see that even that house served a purpose. "Mom, come live with us," Eric offered. His fiancé welcomed me warmly. Since I couldn't keep relying on Judy, who lived alone, indefinitely, I decided to take Eric up on his offer. I am thinking of living happily with my new family, determined not to become a mother-in-law like my own mother-in-law. After not seeing him for a month, Kevin handed me a divorce lawyer's business card without even asking how I was doing. "Divorcing a wife who doesn't work. Pay me $2,000 a month as alimony." "Sounds good. Take care," Kevin said with a chuckle, standing next to Julie, who was wrapping her arm around him, both wearing smug expressions. "Fine, let's divorce then," I said so casually that Kevin seemed a bit surprised, but he quickly shared his smile with Julie. "Good thing Olivia isn't much of a thinker. It makes my plan easier to execute." After the divorce papers were approved, I decided to start my revenge plan on both of them. I will make them regret this as a celebration of my recovery. My name is Olivia Wilde. I'm a 50-year-old illustrator, and I also work as a children's book author. I love drawing. I have 2 childhood friends, Kevin and Julie. They're important to me, and Kevin is also my husband. It all started when Kevin asked me out as I was heading to a different college after high school. I was surprised. I thought he was into Julie, but I couldn't say no to a confession from Kevin, whom I had secretly liked. After some thought and talking it over with Julie, I accepted Kevin's proposal. Julie's behavior had been problematic since our teenage years, but she was still a dear friend to both Kevin and me. However, Julie had a tendency to steal other people's boyfriends, and then dump them once they became obsessed with her, causing problems repeatedly. Her parents were concerned, so Kevin and I often spent time with her to keep an eye on her. Kevin and I got married when we were 23. 5 years later, Julie introduced her fiancé, Paul, a professional working for a top-tier company. "Nice to meet you, Olivia and Kevin. I've heard so much about you. Looking forward to our future together. Paul said politely when we met. We all got along well right away. During holidays and vacations, we would take trips or long train rides to enjoy some drinks together. However, things started to change after Julie got pregnant, 3 years into her marriage. Kevin and I had many siblings, so we were never worried about having our own children. We decided not to have kids. We both love kids but weren't interested in the responsibilities of raising them. Besides, we enjoyed our freedom to travel and have drinks. We often found it heartwarming to see families with children, but that was it. When Julie announced her pregnancy, Kevin's behavior began to change. He quit smoking because Julie couldn't stand the smell and even used his vacation days to drive her to doctor's appointments. I warned him, Paul might get upset if you're always with Julie. But Kevin argued back, you have work, don't you? She's our childhood friend and she need help. You're heartless, I said. I've been buying things and helping where I can, but going with her to the doctor is too much. Kevin frowned and then glared at me. Why? Because Julie wants it. She's anxious about the checkup. I can't just let her go alone if she's anxious. All the more reason for Paul to go with her, right? If you go with her every time, it's almost like you're the father of the baby, I replied. Jealous? You're not going to get pregnant anyway, so what's the problem? He snapped back. He didn't take my concerns seriously and started to get annoyed. We hardly ever fought during our marriage, but things changed when Julie got pregnant. Our arguments increased and didn't stop even after Julie gave birth. In fact, Kevin started spending even more time with Julie and their child, Lauren. But when Lauren was 5, an incident occurred related to Lauren's graduation ceremonies. The day before the graduation, Kevin suddenly started rummaging through the closet. Kevin, what are you doing? I have a meeting tomorrow, he replied. Kevin's workplace had a casual dress code, but there was a rule to wear a suit during client meetings, so he always kept a few suits ready. Now they were all thrown on the bed. No, just trying to decide what to wear for the graduation ceremony, he said, changing his answer. Are you really thinking of going to the graduation? Paul can't make it and Julie asked me, Kevin said. I was shocked and raised my voice without thinking. That's absurd, no matter how you look at it. Kevin's face turned sour immediately. I knew he sometimes picked Lauren up from kindergarten, and I had too when asked. But it seemed ridiculous for a childhood friend, who wasn't even her biological parent, to attend a graduation ceremony. Do you still doubt me and Julie? I'm disappointed that you can't even help out, Kevin said. That's not the point. Anyway, I'm attending the graduation tomorrow. So iron a shirt properly, Kevin said, ending the conversation abruptly and walking to the bedroom. I had no choice but to call Julie. Hello, Julie, about tomorrow. Sorry about tomorrow. I'm borrowing Kevin, but won't Paul be upset about the graduation attendance? Olivia, what are you talking about? Obviously, I haven't told Paul that the graduation is tomorrow. I'll tell him after the ceremony, Julie replied. I was shocked to learn that Paul didn't know about the graduation schedule. Upon further questioning, it seemed that Julie hadn't informed Paul about any of the kindergarten events so far, and Kevin had been acting as the father of the kindergarten, which made me feel dizzy with its selfishness. Wait a minute, Julie. Isn't that extremely unreasonable? It's disrespectful to Paul, I said. What's wrong, Olivia? You're scary. Well, see you tomorrow, Julie said, hanging up the phone unilaterally. Trembling with anger, I still ironed a shirt, prepared a tie, and the next morning saw Kevin off to Lauren's graduation ceremony. Since then, Julie and Kevin started going out more frequently, from once a month to once a week, and then to 3 times a week. Eventually, even Paul seemed to have some suspicions. One day, while Kevin and Julie were out, he visited our house alone late at night. I'm sorry for visiting you late at night. There's something that's been bothering me. Is it about the two of them? Paul asked. Yes, I would like you to take a look at this, Paul said, showing me the GPS history he had installed in Julie's car. It showed that she had been staying at a hotel 3 times a week. All of those days she was out with Kevin. Just by looking at Paul's face, I understood what that meant. "What do you want to do, Paul?" I asked. "I want to take revenge on those two," I said. "Me too. I can't forgive them for betraying us after all this time," Paul agreed. We started planning our revenge in secret. First, I focused on increasing my income. Since I had been saving money by doing housework and taking care of Lauren, my income had decreased significantly. Paul switched to working from home. When Julie and Kevin would go out, he would bring Lauren to my house, and we would take care of her together. Neither Julie nor Kevin knew that we were aware of their affair, and we managed to gather solid evidence against them. Once we had collected enough evidence and were ready to take our revenge, we discovered a shocking truth about Lauren. Paul and I struggled with the decision, but we agreed that we didn't want to hurt young Lauren. So we decided to wait until she was an adult to take our revenge. However, even though we decided to wait for 12 years, I was struck with a serious illness that required long-term hospitalization. At best, I wouldn't be discharged for at least 3 years. Although I could work from the hospital room, it was clear that I would have to reduce my workload. After telling Paul about my situation, I consulted Kevin, but his reaction was indifferent, just like small talk. "I'll visit you once in a while," he said. I felt that Kevin no longer cared for me, as he didn't even ask about my condition or the name of the disease. In reality, Kevin only visited once a month or once every 2 months. After Lauren's 17th birthday, she started acting strangely. Although she used to visit me almost every day right after I was hospitalized, she became distant after her birthday. Neither Paul nor I could figure out why. Even when we asked Lauren, she just said, "Don't worry about it." However, we ended up learning the reason from Kevin, who rarely showed up. "Hey, it's been a while," he said casually, having completely changed into a flashy appearance. He walked in without knocking. After not seeing him for a month, Kevin just thrusts a divorce lawyer's business card at me without even asking how I was feeling. "Divorcing a wife who doesn't work? Pay me $2,000 a month as alimony. That's the deal, so take care," Kevin said, grinning from ear to ear. Beside him, Julie wrapped her arms around Kevin, both wearing similar expressions on their faces. "Fine, let's divorce then," I said. I agreed to the divorce casually, which surprised Kevin for a moment, but he quickly exchanged smiles with Julie. It was good that Kevin wasn't the type to think too deeply. That's why my plan worked so well. After I got the notification that the divorce was finalized from Kevin, I decided to start my revenge plan against the two of them. I was going to make them regret their actions as a way to celebrate my recovery. I immediately started to take action. First, I contacted Paul to arrange a transfer to a different hospital. Then, I informed my lawyer that they would be handling communications between us from now on. Paul also began to act. He moved near my new hospital with Lauren and started visiting me often. Lauren still looked sad, but I was happy she came to see me every day. Most of my belongings were already in the hospital room, so I told Kevin to get rid of the rest. I didn't want to keep anything that they might have touched in my new life. Once the hospital transfer and Paul and Lauren's move were settled, I received a call from Kevin. I had only been away from my phone for a few minutes, but there were already 50 missed calls. I answered the phone, feeling annoyed. "What? Hey, what the hell is going on?" I could hear the voice of a troubled real estate agent behind Kevin's panicked voice and Julie yelling, which made me feel sick. "What do you mean? What's going on? It's obviously about the house. Why do we have to move out?" Kevin shouted at me as if it wasn't his fault at all. Coolly, I replied, "Obviously, because that's my house." Kevin seemed to have completely forgotten, but the truth was the house we lived in was a room I rented as a workspace when I started making a living as a freelancer. At that time, I didn't have enough income to maintain 3 houses, and Kevin didn't have enough income to live alone, so he ended up moving into my place. Therefore, Kevin had never paid the rent or utility bills for that room. Although I received some money from him for living expenses, it wasn't enough to maintain the place. Unfortunately, that room was already canceled. It was far from the hospital I transferred to, so I had processed the cancellation the day after submitting the divorce papers. I didn't tell him because the real estate agent, who knew about our situation, said they would contact him. Suddenly, Paul and Lauren disappeared, and our house was sold. "What are we going to do about our new house?" Kevin asked. "I don't know. Maybe stay in a business hotel for now," I said as I turned on the speaker and started working. Kevin yelled in frustration, "Don't mess with me." However, he seemed to remember something and started speaking in a more soothing tone. "Well, whatever. When will you transfer the money? We're running low on cash." "What are you talking about? Don't mess around. I told you to pay $22,000, didn't I?" he asked. "Oh, I don't recall agreeing to that," I responded calmly, which was met with incoherent screaming from Kevin on the other end of the phone. Apparently, he thought he could get money from me and had been spending carelessly. "Even if you had $22,000 left, how did you plan to get by for the rest of the month?" I questioned. "Hey, don't just stay silent, say something," he demanded. "There's really nothing to talk about," I retorted, leaving Kevin momentarily dumbfounded. But he soon started yelling again. Growing increasingly annoyed, I addressed Kevin in as cheerful a tone as I could muster. "Anyway, we're basically strangers now, so please don't contact me anymore. You'll hear from my lawyer." "Huh? Lawyer? Hey, wait a minute." Kevin tried to respond, but I hung up without listening. He tried calling back several times, but I ignored it, and eventually the calls stopped. However, angry that I didn't answer, Kevin started ignoring calls from my lawyer. He certainly had a childish side, but I never imagined he'd be the kind of person who didn't mind causing trouble for others. I sighed deeply at Kevin's selfishness. A few months later, after a temporary discharge from the hospital, I visited Kevin's parents' house. In front of me were Kevin and Julie, both looking small and trembling. "You telling my parents is a low blow," Kevin said. "Oh, I just reported that we got divorced," I replied calmly. Kevin glared at me in response, but he shrank back under his father's stern gaze. Actually, I had a great relationship with my in-laws, even visiting and dining with them when Kevin wasn't around. Despite being so well-loved, I felt it was important to share the details of our divorce. I went to visit Kevin's parents. "Is it true that you're remarrying Julie?" I asked. "Yes, it's true. Julie, Lauren, and I are going to start over as a family," Kevin replied. "What are you talking about? Your only family is Olivia," his father said, clearly upset. "She's not my family anymore," Kevin replied, which made his father frown in disbelief. Kevin shook his head a few times, then handed me a piece of paper. It was a bill from a nearby luxury hotel. "What's this?" I asked. "It's the bill from the hotel we stayed at," Kevin said, as if it was obvious, and pointed at the bill on the table. Then he suddenly collapsed. "Oh, what the heck, Mom? I didn't raise you to be like this," my mother-in-law gasped for breath, looking at Kevin with disbelief. Next to him, Julie wore the same expression. "Why are you so angry? It's just that the family is changing because I'm getting married. Plus, you'll have a grandchild, a blood-related one at that. Aren't you happy?" Kevin said. "You two didn't." My mother-in-law, looking as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing, glanced at them, then turned her gaze to me. Both my in-laws knew I didn't want children and still treated me as their own daughter. Of course, they treated Julie, my childhood friend, similarly, but there was always a boundary between a daughter-in-law and a friend. I remembered Julie often complaining about that, so I was certain my mother-in-law wouldn't be happy about this situation, and Julie should have known it too. "You do want Lauren, right? It'll be your grandchild, so you'll be happy, right? It's because she's a child I've known since she was little." "Oh, but half of her blood is from Kevin, right?" Julie said, showing no remorse and acting as if she couldn't understand the problem, which was unsettling. At that moment, someone who had been silent until now spoke up. Enough already, it's disgusting. Lauren, who had been playing with her smartphone in the corner of the room, spoke to Julie without looking up. The room fell into a stunned silence. My dad is the only one I consider my father, whether we're related by blood or not. He's the only one. But you know, Kevin has always been the one to attend your school events, Lauren continued. I heard everything from Dad, how he was always informed of the event dates after they were over, how eventually even the events themselves were kept from him. But Dad always said I was his daughter, so I am his daughter, and I will never be yours. Lauren glared at Julie as she said this, then sitting beside me, she switched to a more concerned tone. You know, when I found out about this, I thought you would hate me, but Dad said that wasn't the case, so I came here today. Lauren, I love you so much. You were so kind to visit me every day while I was in the hospital. I was really happy, Olivia said. Lauren, perhaps relieved of her anxiety, teared up and hugged me tightly. It might indeed be a child resulting from an affair between Kevin and Julie, yet it's a child I've taken care of for 16 years. There's no way I don't have affection for her, I continued. Speaking of which, Julie, weren't you curious why I wasn't surprised when I found out Lauren is Kevin's daughter? I asked. Julie looked startled, but before she could speak, a new person entered the room. We knew from the start. 12 years ago, actually, Paul suddenly appeared, which was understandable as he had recently asked for a divorce due to irreconcilable differences. I was shocked when you mentioned divorce. Oh, and unfortunately, you're not divorced yet. The divorce papers are still here, didn't you notice? I figured it wasn't in Julie and Kevin's nature to confirm things. But I couldn't help but be stunned that Julie, despite the 200-day waiting period for women to remarry, had not noticed for months. So Julie is still my wife, and Lauren is still my daughter. Well, since there won't be a wife though, Julie interrupted. Wait, what do you mean? A 16-year-old can choose their parent. That's not true. Lauren wants to be with Mom, right? Julie said that and looked at Lauren. Lauren frowned at Julie and held my hand. Julie was speechless at that and glared at me. Then Kevin suddenly burst into laughter. So that's what it is. You two are together, huh? But too bad. Isn't it impossible to live on Paul's salary alone? Can you stop making weird assumptions? Also, it seems Paul earns double the amount you think, I replied. Julie probably knew about it, but it might just be a bluff. Besides, it's impossible for you to work while dealing with your illness. You'll just die miserably somewhere, Kevin said. This time, I laughed at Kevin's huge misunderstanding. Seeing me laugh, Kevin started getting frustrated. You didn't know about my income, did you? It's probably just a bit more than a part-time job. No. It's different. My annual income is $800,000, I said. Kevin's eyes and mouth were wide open in shock. Julie was also stunned. In fact, over the past 12 years, I have become a popular children's book author, and my income has really gone up because of essays, interviews, and more. There's even a movie based on my books coming soon, so I'm earning even more. Oh, do you want to see this? I said, and showed Julie my bank account on my phone. It clearly showed a lot of money being deposited every month. Julie was speechless when she saw it. Olivia, let's make up, huh? Kevin said, sounding hopeful. What are you saying? Julie was angry at Kevin's words. I just watched them quietly, then finally spoke. Well, if you want to get married, feel free. Oh, and I'll definitely take the compensation for damages. Olivia, wait. Kevin called out, but I ignored him. I took Lauren's hand, said goodbye to my in-laws, and left their house. Kevin used to work at my father-in-law's company, but it was discovered he lied about going out for sales, and he was fired. My father-in-law planned to make him work on a friend's fishing boat, which was tough for Kevin, who preferred indoor work. He tried to contact me several times, but I always let my father-in-law know, and eventually, Kevin stopped calling. Julie lost custody of Lauren to Paul and got divorced. She seemed uninterested in Kevin, who couldn't afford luxuries anymore, and didn't chase after him. She was cut off by her family and lived alone in a rundown apartment. She hadn't worked since getting married and had always relied on others, so she found it hard to do things on her own. There were hardly any places that would hire her full-time, but she needed to pay for her living expenses and child support, so she worked multiple part-time jobs and barely made ends meet. After starting high school, Lauren worked hard every day to study abroad and go to a prestigious university overseas. Being originally diligent, her dream is to translate my picture books and deliver them to children all over the world, which makes me happy. As for me, my picture books are selling well, and I'm getting more offers for animated adaptations and merchandise. My health is also getting better, and although I'm still in the hospital, my doctor recently told me that I might be able to leave the hospital next year. One more thing, Paul and Lauren come to visit me every day. Paul recently confessed to me with remarriage in mind. I haven't given my answer yet, but I can't help but have feelings for him. He said he wants to live together when I leave the hospital. While thinking about what to answer, I work on my picture books every day, hoping for a happy future for us. I weave stories again today.